Here is the text of the trade deal. President Donald J. Trump and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer committed to deliver shared prosperity for American and British citizens alike. Our governments have a unique opportunity to enhance our economic partnership through the U.S.-UK Economic Prosperity Deal, the EPD. A first of its kind, the United States and the United Kingdom expect the EPD to address three core objectives based on fairness and reciprocity. Removing trade barriers, ensuring the special relationship is rooted on the enduring document serves to define the general terms for the EPD that set forth the shared, so it's not really a trade deal. Both the United States and the United Kingdom recognize that this document does not constitute a legally binding agreement. Okay, sorry. I was at 1. We're going back to 0. So there are 0 trade deals set up, I guess. Trump is flying back to the U.S. Yes, for D.C. Yes, we see that. Both countries confirm they intend to discuss high standard commitments related to intellectual property. The United States or the UK may terminate this arrangement by giving written notice to the other. Okay, Jesus. You go off on Hassan for listening to chat or recollection of events, but you just did the same with Justical and never watch his clips on stream. I don't watch his clips on stream, but I get a lot of it sent to me and I listen to them. You don't believe? I generally don't. I'm just trying not to publicize those people much. This is not our war. Oh boy.
We showed our capability.
And they are expecting him to.
Was you believe
Iran, that was his. If the UN's experts are correct, then Iran is or was 3 days away from enriching enough uranium to build an atomic bomb. That would support Prime Minister Netanyahu's claim that Iran is months, not years, from developing nuclear weapons. And nuclear Iran would be a serious threat to Israel and, frankly, to all of us. Now, we know this because the ruling mullahs are not subtle about their intentions. As we're supposed to believe that chanting death to Israel, death to Britain and death to America is just excitable rhetoric like globalize the intifada. But there's a lot that we don't know for sure about this crisis. Frankly, the foreign policy experts don't have a stellar record on weapons of mass destruction in Middle Eastern dictatorships. Today, the IAEA, whose evidence is the basis for a lot of this, said the IDF is exaggerating the damage it's done to Iran's nuclear facilities. As recently as March, the US Director of National Intelligence said this.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon.
As March, the US Director of National Intelligence said this.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003.
That's both of those statements are pretty vague. When you say not building a nuclear weapon, the real question is he enriching the uranium? I imagine that, well, is building the warhead itself arbitrary? Maybe not. Maybe that is a sufficient or decently difficult process. But the uranium enrichment, I think, is the big thing that people are concerned about. And recreating the same nuclear weapons program from 2003, is it a new one? Or I don't know. I don't trust this person at all. This is an evil, demonic person as well. So
the IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
Well, Netanyahu has been talking up the imminent threat of a nuclear weapon in Tehran for at least 33 years, and his core message has always been that Europe, and most importantly America, should be very afraid about it. Here he was making that point to me in 2013. If President Rouhani picked the telephone up and called you, would you take that call?
No, we're not averse to calling. It's a question. I'll tell you what I'll tell him. You want the sanctions lifted? Stop your nuclear program. Why do you need underground bunkers? Why do you need ICBMs? The sole purpose of ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, is to carry nuclear payloads. By the way, not to Israel, to Europe and to the United States. They already have missiles that reach Israel. Why do you need to enrich uranium?
Well, most of the allies who are furious with Israel's increasingly brutal war in Gaza are in lockstep with Netanyahu on Iran, but that doesn't mean there is any public support for being dragged into a full-scale war. And mission creep is Netanyahu's speciality. If Israel's neutralized Iran's nuclear threat, then I support that. But I think I speak for most when I say I don't support mass civilian suffering in a prolonged war that's contingent on support from everybody else. In a moment, we'll debate all this with my panel, the columnist of Sunday Times, Matthew Said, host and founder of The Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Ben Ferguson, who's the co-host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz, and Jack Posobiec, the senior editor at Human Events. But first, I'm joined by Danon. He's the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations.
Crazy that Posobiec is allowed to even show his face in the United States without being immediately exiled.
Mr. Danon, thank you very much indeed for coming back on Uncensored. First of all, can you just explain to me where you believe Israel currently is in this operation?
Thank you for having me again, Piers. So we are pushing back Iran. It's going to be a long process. For years, Iran built those capabilities, and we know Iran is a big country, and they have a lot of capabilities. And when I speak about capabilities, it's not only the nuclear program that everybody speaks about, it's also the ballistic missile industry. We found out the intentions of Iran to build a massive force of ballistic missiles that can actually compete with the US and Russia. And by the way, unfortunately, we are paying the price almost every night because you see the damage of those ballistic missiles. So you can just imagine if they had thousands of those missiles at the same time targeting Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, it would be devastating. So we are targeting the nuclear facilities, we are targeting the ballistic missile infrastructure, and overall, we know about the extermination plan of Iran.
What did he do? Wait, what did
against Israel, so we are pushing them back.
Wait.
There
Sorry.
are certain
missile. So you captured of Iran to build a massive force of ballistic big country, and they have a lot of capabilities. And when I speak about capabilities, it's not only the nuclear program that everybody speaks about, it's also the ballistic missile industry. We found out the intentions of Iran to build a massive force of ballistic missiles that can actually compete with the US and Russia. And by the way, unfortunately, we are paying the price almost every night because you see the damage of those ballistic missiles. So you can just imagine if they had thousands of those missiles at the same time targeting Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, it would be devastating. So we are targeting the nuclear facilities, we are targeting the ballistic missile infrastructure, and overall, we know about the extermination plan of Iran against Israel, so we are pushing them back.
There are certain sites which you have been unable to get to because you don't have enough weaponry. America has that weaponry. Would you like America to help you, to give you the weaponry you need to get in to where you believe a lot of this nuclear stuff is being hidden?
Well, that would be a US decision. When we look at what's happening in Iran, they're threatening not only Israel, but the US. They're burning American flags. They try to assassinate President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. So I think the American people understand that we are fighting their fight, but it will be their decision to decide if they want to get involved and how to get involved. But in the past, it's not for the first time. We were the one who took the initiatives. When we attacked the reactor in Iraq in 1982, we did it ourselves. Same was the case when we attacked the reactor in Syria. It's not the same. We are talking about a much bigger task this time, a strong country. And when you look at the numbers, Israel is a tiny country. 9 million people compared to 90 million people in Iran. You look at the size of Israel, Iran is 70 times bigger than Israel. So it is a challenge for us, but we decided not to wait anymore.
There are many people who say that Prime Minister Netanyahu in particular has spent 3 decades talking.
Is there any actual proof how much they've enriched it? Well, for the first time, I believe that the International Agency of something, IAEA, sorry. What does it stand for? International something atomic? IAEA. Wait, what the fuck does it stand for? International Atomic Energy Agency. Sorry. I think put out a warning statement saying that Iran is up to some fuck shit. And then the number that I keep hearing passed around is that they've enriched uranium up to 60% thus far is the estimate, which is really scary and is that's pretty far in the direction of almost having something ready to be weapons grade uranium. So that's not good.
About the imminent danger of Iran developing nuclear weapons and enriching uranium. Why should we believe now that it is any nearer to being done than in those 30 odd years?
Well, first, you need to listen to the IAEA. If you don't want to believe us or our intelligence, they said themselves that they have enough enriched uranium, that it's enough for multiple bombs. And then you look at the intentions, and I tend to believe the Iranians. When they say they want to destroy Israel, I believe them. When they say that they will use those weapons, and have a sign that actually with a clock in the square in the middle.
Purely from a strategic point of view, would the U.S. bombing Iran be worth it? I would say yes, but the problem is you would like this to be a part of a larger, more comprehensive vision for the Middle East. I think I'd prefer weapons be given to Israel and Israel goes and bombs them. Having the United States fly this mission with actual U.S. planes, it feels substantially different. I feel like we should just give the shit to Israel. They're bunker busters or whatever the fuck else. Just give it to them and let them fly the missions. I don't know why U.S. planes would be doing this. It seems kind of weird.
Middle of the Iran, I believe them. So we don't take any chances anymore. And after October 7th, we saw the evil of our enemies. So we cannot wait and decide to wait more whether Iran will have the bomb and will use
Iran doesn't have the planes for it? Can't we just sell them the planes for it?
It or not, we are not going to be in that situation. That's why we took the preemptive attack. And when you have the intention, and you have the ballistic missiles, and you have enriched uranium, so until when should we wait? Until they actually send the bomb to Tel Aviv? We will not do that.
Your defense minister, Katz, this morning posted on X, the arrogant dictator from Tehran has become a...
Verification monitoring of the Islamic Republic of Iran in light of United Nations Security Council Resolution 2231. Dated May 31st, 2025. As previously reported on December 5th, 2024, 6 months ago, Iran started feeding the two IR-6 cascades, producing UF-6 enriched up to 60%, U-235 at FFEP with UF-6 enriched up to 20%, U-235 rather than UF-6 enriched up to 5%, U-235, without altering the enrichment level of the product. The effect of this change has been to significantly increase the rate of production of UF-6 enriched up to 60% at FFEP to over 34 kilograms of uranium in the form of UF6 per month. Iran's second pilot enrichment plant. Okay, so it's a nuclear plant. Fuck, what does this mean again? Uranium hexafluoride. This is the gas or whatever that they shoot through to centrifuge stuff out or whatever? No. It's a volatile white solid that can be converted into a gas when heated, making it suitable for gaseous diffusion and centrifuge enrichment processes. Okay.
Cowardly murderer who fires targeted shots at the civilian home front in Israel to deter the IDF from continuing the attack but is collapsing its capabilities.
60% of what? Or is it more than... when you have it just refers to, like, if you have a block of uranium, you're asking what percentage of that uranium is a certain type of uranium that is good for sustaining highly volatile nuclear reaction, basically, that can explode. And to make a thing that blows up really well, you want a block of uranium, and you want that uranium to be like 90 to 95% of a certain type of uranium of, is it 235? And then the other 40%, I'm guessing, is 238, right? So it's just a matter of getting it up higher and higher and higher. If you want to do like power plant stuff, then you can have a block of uranium, and it only has to be like 5%, I think at the most, needs to be uranium-235. Once you get past 5%, then people are like, well, what are you doing with that? But once you get it up to 90 to 95%, that's like capable of being used to do a nuclear explosion.
Residents of Tehran will pay the price, and soon. This was seen by many people, including myself. I responded to that, to say that this seemed to be a direct threat against the civilian population of Tehran. He later said, I would like to clarify the obvious, even though it clearly...
These conversations are so primitive. Are there other people having these debates, I guess? It's all like civilians dying. It's like this is like such a surface level, childlike approach to any of this international conflict. It's so fucking cringe and boring.
Wasn't obvious. There is no intention to physically harm the residents of Tehran, as the murderous dictator does against residents of Israel. And they carried on the clarification. But it was a very stupid thing of him to post, wasn't it? To even infer, albeit in a way that he says came out wrong, that the civilian population, the residents of Tehran, would become targets of Israeli strikes.
Well, as you said, Piers, the minister clarified his statement.
But they really were that close? Yes, this is a statement from like the International Atomic Energy bullshit agency. Like, this is showing that they were at... They already had, in December, they already had stuff enriched up to 60%, and they had over 34 kilograms of uranium to over, they enriched up to 60% at this nuclear power plant centrifuge stuff, over 34 kilograms of uranium in the form of UF6 per month. Jesus. Installing a ton of these things. But, okay.
But I would say more than that. Not only we care for the people of Iran, we pray for them. And if they are watching us now, I want to tell them we feel their feels and we have nothing against them. We know that they are being oppressed, and we pray for the day that they will be able to live normal life and we can go back to where we were 46 years ago, before the revolution. We had daily flights between Tel Aviv to Tehran. We had a real bond with the Iranian people, and I believe one day it will be the same. So we pray for the Iranian people, and we hope that they will not be oppressed in the future. And for us, we do everything we can to minimize civilian casualties. Even today, we announced that we are going to attack a certain area in Tehran in order to minimize civilian casualties, and they are doing exactly the opposite. Every night they are targeting cities, neighborhoods in Israel, and unfortunately every night we have casualties, families, kids that are being killed from those missiles.
You've been very successful in taking out a lot of the senior military commanders in Iran and a number of nuclear scientists. This is according to obviously what you have put out. But the Ayatollah remains alive. It's been reported that President Trump has vetoed any attempt to assassinate the Ayatollah. But I mean, why, out of interest, if you're going to target all the top people of the regime, why would you not target the Ayatollah?
Piers, I will not go into detail, but I will tell you that, we showed our capabilities. We showed the amount of intelligence we have about the whereabouts of the leadership of Iran and the IRGC. We showed our capability to fly everywhere, not only above Tehran, everywhere in Iran, which is a huge country. So we have those capabilities, and we will decide, what we will do next.
Many of us carry around bulky, worn-out wallets that are uncomfortable and full of junk. The big question is why. Ridge wallets can hold 12 cards plus cash with zero bulk. Yeah, it's tight. Digital cards against digital
Ridge wallets.
The report is they will ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them I sent you. Just explain something to me, which is that this has clearly been a very well-planned operation. There are reports of Mossad agents being all over Iran, planning all sorts of stuff.
Somebody's saying they're watching me on Fox News. On what Fox News channel? Fox News. This? I don't even know what's live for them.
Stuff involving drones and targeting sites and targeting people and so on. So from a military perspective, a highly successful operation so far, as indeed was the operation against Hezbollah, where 3,000 terrorists were targeted with the pager devices. Again, very successful, very precise, very targeted, Mossad's fingerprints all over it. Which does beg the question, and it's one that I've asked, I've not really had a satisfactory answer to.
Why didn't you guys do this in Gaza?
But why is it that with Mossad, one of the world's foremost intelligence agencies, being clearly at the forefront of going after terrorism with Hezbollah and with now Iran, why was it completely incapable of knowing that right on the doorstep of Israel, Hamas, who were given government, or elected governors, but given free reign when Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, that they were able to spend 20 years building a highly sophisticated, very deep tunnel network, and were then able to plan one of the world's worst terror attacks of modern times. And even after doing all that, the only way that Israel's been able to go after Hamas has been to basically flatten as much of Gaza as it can, and in the process kill 50, 60, maybe 70,000 or more people, including maybe 3/4 of that being civilians. People seem sort of nonplussed why Mossad seems to have dropped the ball so badly in Gaza and with Hamas, and yet been so successful in other parts of the region.
So first, I agree with you that we have to give credit for the Mossad for the operations in Lebanon and in Tehran. We have no border with Iran. We have no dispute with them. It's 1,000 miles away from Israel, and still we developed very impressive capabilities in Iran. Regarding to your question, it's important to understand that Mossad is not in charge of Gaza or acquiring intelligence in Gaza. In our government, in our system, you have separation between
why not?
Mossad,
if you don't mind me interrupting, why not? I mean, they've been right in the heart of Tehran.
Allow me
they've been in the heart of Lebanon. Why not Gaza?
Got him.
Doesn't make any sense.
So I will explain my point that Mossad is dealing with external threats, and the Shabak, the internal security agency, deals with the threat within Israel, which includes Gaza and Judea and Samaria. So yes, I agree with you that we failed on October 7th, and we're going to have to inquire exactly what happened. I was Deputy Minister of Defense 10 years ago, and I sat in many important intelligence committees. I think one of the reasons for our mistake was that we focused too much on Lebanon and Hezbollah. We always thought that Hezbollah is an imminent threat, and they will be the one who will actually invade Israel. They will be the one who will attack Israel, and we put a lot of resources, a lot of energy looking north. We should have looked south, and that was a huge mistake. We paid a heavy price for that, but I agree with you. We're going to have to look into what happened in Gaza and why it was neglected.
There's a very long and detailed and very damning report that's come out today in New York Magazine, extremely thorough and detailed and well-researched, which concludes that Israel has almost certainly been perpetrating a lot of war crimes in Gaza. This is something which your own former prime ministers have been saying now as well. Obviously, Israel's government has emphatically denied this, but at the same time persists in having a ban on any international journalists coming into Gaza to verify what is actually happening on the ground. Surely the best way to establish whether you have or haven't been acting within the law is to allow international journalists in to do their job, isn't it?
Well, first, I have to disagree with this language. I deal with that at the UN every day when people spread lies so easily, blood libels,
Well, these are former prime ministers of Israel, with all due respect. I mean, they're not exactly people who you would normally expect to accuse Israel of war crimes.
He was prime minister 20 years ago, and he's bitter, and he doesn't like the current government. But not only from the inside. Tom Fletcher, a senior diplomat here at the UN, claimed that 14,000 babies will die within 48 hours.
Yeah, he made a terrible mistake. That was a stupid thing to say, and he made a terrible mistake, for which he's apologized.
Yeah, but he didn't apologize for claiming there is a genocide in Gaza. So people, spread those lies, and then sometimes they retract it, sometimes they don't, and we have to deal with the consequences, with the incitement. So yes, I agree with you. There is suffering in Gaza. I agree with you. It is painful for Israelis and Palestinians. But let's, stick to international law. Let's look at the facts. We are doing our best. Even now, when we are in the middle of a war with Iran, today the centers in Gaza were operated, the Humanitarian Fund, and 4 centers delivered tens of thousands of packages to Palestinians. So I think we should look at the facts and to understand that we still have hostages in Gaza, and this conflict will end with the hostages coming home and Hamas getting out of Gaza. Maybe they will be deported like what happened in Lebanon in the 80s with the PLO. Maybe they will surrender, but I think that will be the end of this conflict.
And why haven't you let the journalists in?
Well, first of all, today you have access, you have Wi-Fi, you can see everything that happens in Gaza. You have reporters inside Gaza for all agencies that support. For us to take responsibility for people coming in and out in a war zone, it's something we don't feel comfortable with.
I don't think you need to. Listen, all I know is, with all due respect, Ambassador, is that very soon after October the 7th, Israel's government instructed the IDF to take the world's journalists to the scene of the appalling crimes of terrorism committed in Israel. But when it comes to what is going on in Gaza, there's been an almost total ban on any international journalists. And with all due respect, it's not your concern whether international journalists will be at risk or not. That's the risk assessment of their own companies.
That's absolutely Israel's concern, because if any of them die in there, they get blamed for it. So of course it's their concern, but
to employ them, as it is in any war zone. You should allow them in, and then this whole question of whether Israel is operating within the law or not can actually be established by independent journalists coming from around the world. And until you do that, it's going to raise the obvious suspicion that you are doing things you don't want the world to know.
Well, it's a legitimate debate, but just imagine what would happen. God forbid, one of the journalists will die.
Well, nearly 200 Palestinian journalists have been killed, so it's not unusual for journalists to be dying.
I have to beg with you also, I don't buy those numbers, also when you
Well, you don't buy any of the numbers. That's the problem. Again, all due respect, Ambassador, Israel can now just say that you don't buy any of the numbers because they're all supplied by the Palestinians.
When it comes from Hamas, I don't buy any numbers.
Yes, but you also know that in previous...
When it comes from Hamas, I don't buy it.
Right, but historically, in this conflict, going back decades, actually, the Palestinian Health Authority numbers for casualties have turned out to be broadly accurate after the event. So it's only in this particular flare-up, this particular war, as part of the ongoing conflict, that suddenly Israel's government is saying you can't believe any of the numbers. To which, again, I simply say there's a very easy way to verify this stuff. Let in the journalists.
Is Piers usually this against Israel? Piers isn't against Israel. He's just one of the cocked no more civilian deaths. If you have a pro-Hamas person on here, Piers will push you a lot as well. I feel like Piers, his general disposition tends to be more pro-Israel than not, is my overall feeling. But he's pushing the IDF guy here, so I shouldn't say IDF guy, the Israeli spokesperson or whatever here.
No, we saw that those numbers that were exaggerated from the beginning, they were used by Hamas for propaganda.
Wait, he's completely swapped to Dave Smith? Oh, what, has Piers changed views recently? Oh, maybe it's changed in the past few weeks.
And I agree with you. It's hard to find out the exact numbers, but when you read those numbers, you ask yourself, so where are the Hamas terrorists? They didn't die in this conflict. They claim they were all civilians, were all children. We know it's exaggerated. But you know what? I agree with you that there is suffering in Gaza and there is casualties in Gaza. But the blame is on Hamas. It's not on us. We can end this war tomorrow. If they would release the hostages, lay down the weapons, maybe get out of Gaza, and then we can think about a future for the region.
It's interesting.
The sooner it will happen, the better it will be.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans,
holy shit!
It's too late. Let Congress right. The next move, not the IRS. Yeah, look, it's interesting to me that as somebody that supported Israel's right to defend itself after the appalling events of October the 7th, those terrible terror attacks, and I did so for many, many months, but as I become increasingly critical of Israel's government strategy in Gaza, and so have many other people, including many of your allies, that at the same time, you've got a lot of broad support for what you're doing with Iran, because people understand that Iran has become this kind of fulcrum of terrorism in the Middle East. We have to draw close to our interview, but it does, again, beg the question. If the IDF had been more targeted in conjunction with Mossad in going after Hamas, rather than just leveling Gaza to the ground and killing tens of thousands of civilians as it went after Hamas, if it had been as targeted or as smart as it was with Hezbollah and now in Iran, you may have had a lot more support than you're currently getting for what you're doing in Gaza.
Probably you're right, but I want to add one point. It's much harder to deal with a terrorist organization that hide among civilians and use them as a human shield. That's why this war is very long. 20 months, it's a very long war for us. It's different. It's easier to fight a military or to fight another state than to fight a terror organization which is, so involved with the civilians in Gaza. So it's much more challenging. But I hope that the people in Hamas understand that we are determined, and hopefully in the next few days they will accept the framework that the US put on the table, and we can move forward to see a ceasefire and the release of more hostages.
Ambassador Danon, I appreciate you coming back on Uncensored. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's go to the panel. Cenk, I could see you reacting pretty violently to what you were hearing there. So what is your response to what you heard from the ambassador?
It's a goddamn genocide.
Yeah, when Israeli officials speak, it's like they're in fantasy land.
Yes.
So they leveled Gaza. And the reason that they leveled Gaza is because they're going to take Gaza. And that's not speculation anymore. When those of us who were opposed to their war crimes and genocide said they were going to take Gaza, that it had nothing to do with self-defense, it had to do with land acquisition, as all the wars that Israel starts has to do with. They said, oh, that's anti-Semitic, how dare you? Now their cabinet has said, yeah, we're going to take Gaza. It's a conquest. So now they've started another offensive war in Iran. They'll pretend to be the victims. That's what they always do. Oh my God, so I had to start a war for self-defense. Nonsense, garbage. Just like you said, 33 years, they've been saying any day now Iran's going to have nukes. It was a lie. Netanyahu went on Fox News over the weekend, admitted they weren't even close to having it within a year. Then they said, oh, it's because of ballistic missiles. The ambassador there again referred to the ballistic missiles. An incredible number of countries have ballistic missiles. Is Israel going to attack all of them? Is Israel going to...
Are we going to bring up the recent statements that have been a historic departure, I think, because I don't think the IAEA has ever made statements about Iran being close to having weapons-grade uranium. Ever. I don't think in the history ever. Are we going to reference these at all, or are these guys all Jewish as well? I didn't check the names on the reports, so...
invade all of them and then pretend that it's self-defense? How many? And then they talk about, oh, we try so hard to not have civilian deaths, and then American media plays along. No, they killed hundreds of civilians in Tehran. So they always kill civilians. They always kill more civilians than their opponents while pretending that they care so much about civilians. They're the ones starting all the wars. We all have eyes and ears. We just saw them start this war. And every time American media plays along and pretends that there's a fantasy land where Israel's the victim, and they, oh my God, they just had to attack yet another Middle Eastern neighbor. They just had to take Gaza. So almost when you hear an Israeli official speaking,
Piers,
they're lying. They're lying almost 100% of the time.
I mean, I'm going to come to Ben Ferguson to respond. All I would say is, clearly, when you have the leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, who's gone on record as saying he wants to get rid of Israel, and when you have Hamas in Gaza, who are also wedded to getting rid of Israel, it's not completely irrational that they would feel that they are under threat. Now, you and I have debated a lot the way they've gone about things in Gaza. It's markedly different how they've gone about things in Iran and with Hezbollah. But I don't think we can pretend that Israel is not under threat from either Iran or Hamas. Ben Ferguson.
Yeah, what he just said omitted one massive aspect of the conversation. There was an attack on Israel. There was the kidnapping and the torturing and the raping and the murdering of innocent people that were gathering to have a fun weekend.
What is October 7th? Oh my God. I've been on shows with this guy before. He's a conservative dipshit, or MAG, I think.
Idea that he is forgetting what happened on October 7th and acting like Israel just woke up on a random Tuesday and decided to start...
This has nothing to do with October 7th. Or like in a far away way it does, but that's not why Iran is being attacked right now. But
attacking Gaza is absolute anti-Semitic insanity. We know what started this. And the second part of this, he says, hey, are they going to attack everybody in the world that has ballistic missiles? I lock my doors at my house every night for the people that might be right outside of my house. And you have someone that is saying, we want to annihilate you from the river to the sea and chants death to Israel, and says they want to murder you because you are Jewish, and to act as if they don't have a right to defend themselves, and to attack Gaza after you have a massive terrorist network, an underground tunnel system that allows for them to go after you every single night, where you have to have an iron dome to protect and defend. So everything you just said, with all due respect, is absolute propaganda for the terrorists, because you admitted the fact that Israel was attacked first, that started the whole damn thing.
Okay,
no.
Matthew Said.
No, that's not
hang on, Jake.
What I heard was propaganda for a terrorist just now from Ben. The terrorist state of Israel, who's been occupying the
planned the attack and who supported the attack on October 7th.
Why don't you let them go? Why don't you let foreign people go? How much do you want to oppress and humiliate and murder them? Now you're going to murder Iranians. And by the way, Ben, I think you forgot. You're an American, not an Israeli. Act like an American, not an Israeli. What are you, a foreign agent? Why are you working for a foreign government? Why do you care about American interests?
I don't work for a foreign government.
We got no interest in this war.
All right.
True. The Jewish mind control. Call it out, Mr. Turkman. Yes, the Jew control is in our brains. Yes.
I have an interest in people being able to live a life without fear of bombs coming into their backyard, hitting their apartments, hitting their homes from a terrorist organization.
Iran is a part of that, Gaza, and all of the Middle Eastern neighbors of Israel. They live in fear of Israel, the terrorist state attacking
Israel
them.
Doesn't go on the
all Israel ever does is attack their neighbors and take their land.
All right.
Why did you admit I've known you for a long time. One question. Why did you admit in your opening statement that Israel was attacked on October the 7th? Why did you not mention it one time? Because that is the fact that you cannot bring up, because that is what started the catalyst of where we are today. You know it, so you didn't mention it because you want to indict Israel.
Why not? We can be way more narrow. Israel is not attacking Iran because of October 7th. I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Israel is attacking Iran because they think that Iran is very close, either weeks or few months away from having like missiles that can deliver active and armed nuclear warheads to Israeli territory. That's what's going on right now. I don't know why we're talking about October 7th. Like, in a broader conversation, we can talk about October 7th, sure, but that's not what's happening right now.
Can I answer? Attacking people. It's bullshit.
All right, listen, I do want to let the other two panelists come in. Jake, you'll get a chance to come back.
58 years of brutal occupation. And you think it started on October 7th? 2 years later, you're still murdering Palestinians? Still murdering Palestinian children?
There's a genocide going on.
Okay, you love genocide. I got it.
There are four panelists, guys. There are four panelists. You can come back on in a second and have further thoughts. Matthew Said, you had a great column at the weekend, and you were talking, and I thought it was very striking to me, about the difference between Vladimir Putin rattling his nuclear saber, because, as you pointed out, he's an extremely materialistic guy who's amassed hundreds of billions of illicit gains at the expense of his people, and he's the last person that would want to actually die for his country by pressing nuclear buttons, which would lead to his immediate vaporization. I've been saying that for ages. However, it is a different thing when it comes to Iran.
How is Israel attacking Iran loosely connected to October 7th? Like I said, because Iran is a supporter of Hamas. I don't remember what the direct involvement was. I'm pretty sure there were some planners that were involved in it, but Iran supports all of the proxies that attack Israel, Hezbollah, the Houthis. Hamas.
There will be people there with very fundamentalist ideals who might think, if they're cornered, who might think if there's nothing else they think can get them through, who might think nothing of using a nuclear weapon if it came to it. With the same kind of nihilistic attitude that we saw from Al-Qaeda, that we saw from ISIS and so on.
That's right. I mean, just a couple of quick points. Firstly, I like to think of myself as broadly pro-Israel, but I think, like you, feel that the destruction that has been visited upon Gaza is a moral, political and strategic calamity. When it comes to Iran, the reason I think that the logic of nuclear deterrence won't work is because they are, many of them in the regime, religious fanatics. They believe they have absolute truth. And the psychology of that is very interesting. It means that anyone who doesn't subscribe to their truth is an infidel, and that they are wrong. And they glorify martyrdom and believe that if they can take down infidels, they will go through a door into paradise where they will be blessed forever. And I grew up in the 1980s.
I could be wrong. One day we'll do Iranian history. We never will. I don't think Iran is actually like this. They might say they're like this, and they might train other people to be like this, but I don't know. I don't think they themselves typically engage in this. Do they for Iran? Like, are there Iranian suicide things, or is it like Iranian proxy groups that engage in that kind of stuff? Kind of. I don't even know how common Iranian proxy groups are for that stuff, like Hezbollah or Houthis. Are they like suicide bombing all the time? I'm not. But I mean, when we do the original, when we do the religious analysis, it comes back to places like this. I don't know.
His side, my father was born as a Shia Muslim, and I followed the Iran-Iraq war extremely closely. And viewers might be interested that the clerics, the fanatics who took over after the 79 revolution, indoctrinated young, innocent children that they were supposed to protect and asked them to walk and often run into minefields and blow themselves up. And they were then depicted in government propaganda as heroes, their limbs strewn across battlefields that many of us have now forgotten about. That, to me, is a death cult of great danger, not just to Israel, but to their own people. Because if they acquire a nuclear weapon and they visit one upon Israel, as they have claimed they would do, Ahmadinejad said it.
Iran literally walked children into minefields in what year? After the revolution in the 80s? Like, there's a long time between now and then.
Israel must be wiped from the pages of history. The supreme leader described it as a cancer. Call me old-fashioned, but I take these people's words. I take them at their word, if I can put it that way. But also a danger to the Iranian people who would die in a counterstrike. And by the way, my views of the regime in Iran are corroborated by 70% of the Iranian people, a fantastic people, an ancient civilization, most of whom have been immiserated by this regime that has also destabilized the wider region through proxies and Hamas and Hezbollah. And as you say, Hamas is genocidal too. So one can have, I think, an approach of saying, yeah, Israel have got things wrong. Of course they have. The person who was on before the ambassador doesn't seem to be able to admit that. But my goodness, when Israel goes after the regime in Tehran, not the Iranian people, the regime, I think all right-minded people should support it wholeheartly.
Beans creatine is America's #1, and it's made by a company.
Because
use the promo code Piers up to 30% off. Why is that absurd, Jane?
Because here we go again with the neocons, just like they did with the Iraq War. We're going to liberate the Iranians by dropping a bomb on their heads. And once we murder them, they'll love us, and they'll want to get rid of them.
Who's talking about liberating Iranians and making them love us and all? Like, bro, back to Iraq. All right.
Regime. You can tell all these stories about the regime, and those are true. They're fundamentalists. They're not good guys at all. Saddam was not a good guy. That doesn't mean that we had to invade Iraq and cost ourselves several $1 trillion and over 50,000 Americans dead on behalf of Israel, who at the time called Iraq their #1 enemy, and who had
that is not what's that is not what's happening.
So in this case, Iran did not attack Israel. Israel attacked Iran. Stop lying. Stop lying. Israel attacked Iran. Iran did not attack Israel.
I'm perfectly happy to say
Israel's aggressor.
They did through their proxies, Piers. They did through their proxies.
Yeah, I don't think
on a daily basis.
I just think when anyone tries to
Somebody should ask Cenk point blank, do you think Iran supports Hezbollah? Or Ansar Allah or Hamas? Somebody should just at least get him on the record so he'll say no. Or he probably won't. He'll be like, but the IDF and Israel, if anybody's going to be a terrorist in the region, the United States and Israel are the biggest terrorists, and we want to talk about proxy terrorists, we're going to talk about Israel. Like, he'll do some shit like that. But somebody should force him to answer that question at least.
And fund Hamas and Hezbollah. Think like you cannot be this dumb. I understand that you're propagandist for the regime, but you and I both know.
I understand you.
Cenk won't answer that. He will never address it, and he'll just keep talking past it because it doesn't fit the narrative.
But America first didn't want any
multiple terrorist organizations. They have no funding without Iran.
When I hear you guys describing Israel's enemies,
they attack Israel every day. You know that. You're not that dumb. You're a smart guy.
Sure.
You're a propagandist, but you know that.
Sure. So when I hear you guys describing Israel's enemies, what you're actually doing is projection. You're describing Israel attacking all their neighbors, killing civilians.
How good am I? Now just bring up the U.S. does it even more. If we're going to talk about terrorists, the biggest terrorist first. Don't say Israel, say the United States. Hit the second point, please, so I can finish coming.
Are they
Aggressive
funded
military
by
empire
Iran?
engaged in acquisition and wiping out their enemies.
All right,
you know who said
I'll
from the
pay
river
you
to the
a lot
sea?
of money to do
Benjamin Netanyahu. Who's actually doing from the river to the sea? Benjamin Netanyahu. Who started all the wars? Benjamin Netanyahu. Get out, America, get out of
I
this
hope they
war.
pay you a lot
This
of
has
money
nothing
to
to do
put
with
this
us.
out there.
These guys work for
It's
Israel.
let me bring in Jack,
The idea that the Iranian people
Let me
want to be
bring in
killed,
Jack.
the idea that the Iranian people want to be invaded and bombed
All
is
right.
insanity.
Let
They
me-
do not want that.
No, but I do think a lot of people in Iran.
Leadership.
I do think a lot of people in Iran would probably much prefer to have a different kind of ruler than they currently have,
Amen.
who operates such a draconian and repressive
Yeah, they do
regime.
not want Israeli rulers.
Okay, well, that's a different question. Let me come to Jack. You've been waiting very patiently. Jack, Cenk mentioned America first and how this is incongruous with America first. Well, at the moment, this appears to be an Israeli operation. They started this war with Iran. Donald Trump.
Israel just wants to drag the U.S. into this. I doubt this is a special military operation. Sounds like a perfect opportunity for regime change under Trump. The U.S. doesn't want to participate in a huge war. The only thing that Israel would want from the U.S. if the U.S. is involved at all, is what I was saying yesterday is the thing to look out for is Israel able to degrade Iran's nuclear capabilities? That's the question. If Israel's not able to do it, then Israel's going to lean into the U.S. for help doing that. But there's no world, I don't believe, where the U.S. is doing a full-scale war with Iran. We don't want it. Iran doesn't want it. Israel probably doesn't even really want it. I don't think so. But if they can't kill, they can't blow this place up. If they can't Top Gun, no wait, fuck. What's the name of this? The abbreviation? Somebody's saying it's under a whole bunch of fucking mountains and they can't get to it. That's the thing to look out for because, again, I've said this before. There is no world where Iran has a nuclear weapon and Israel has not exhausted every single part of its ability to destroy or degrade said nuclear weapons capacities. Challenges involved in military strikes against Iran's nuclear program. March 21st. The Fordo Fuel Enrichment Plant. $80 to 90 meters underground. Unknown. Damn.
Appears to be taking a position of we don't want to get involved here, making it clear this is not being done with America's obvious physical help, albeit I don't think he's too bothered about it happening. I'm probably quite pleased if it does destabilize Iran. But where does this all sit with Donald Trump's America First ideology? Should America, if it comes to it, if Iran suddenly attacks an American base, for example, should America get involved in this war?
Well, Piers, this is not America's war. This is a war that is confined to two parties in the Middle East. This is a war where the United States absolutely faces the threat of escalation. And as you mentioned, this mission creep and spilling over into the wider footprint of American military that exists throughout the Middle East. And I don't just mean Iraq and Syria. I mean all the American bases, which are clearly within range of, you mentioned the proxies, you mentioned all these other forces out there. Of course, it strikes the danger of spilling over, not to mention the IRGC has the ability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and imagine what that would do to global shipping and oil prices. By the way, they haven't done that. And 10 years ago today, Donald Trump comes down the golden escalator. And what did he say?
There's two countervailing things, I guess, given that shit. So Iran, I don't think is shutting down Strait of Hormuz or any of that shit. That's the little place that's north of Saudi Arabia, because the whole world will fucking hate them for it, and they'll be like, okay, you're done. And Iran's not going to start indiscriminately bombing U.S. bases. Remember, after we killed Soleimani, Iran was like, we're going to bomb your embassy, the one that is in Iraq, and we're going to target that one in 6 hours. We're going to shoot missiles at it, so just so you know, right? And they made a big show about it, and they did that, and they're like, okay, we're done, but we got you, right? I don't think Iran wants to escalate against the United States. But the only countervailing thing here that maybe would push Iran to do crazy shit, that I've said before, is that the situation across the Middle East has just gotten worse and worse for Iran over time, especially with the string of stunning Israeli military victories and intelligence victories over the past year and a half. The significant attacks on Hezbollah, I guess U.S. strikes maybe on the Houthis, if that matters much, and then the eradication of Hamas, basically, and then the collapse of Assad's regime in Syria. These are all things that are heavily unfavorable towards Iran and maybe would make them take a more suicidal or unhinged posture towards stuff in the Middle East, maybe, but I'm not sure. I just don't know I don't even know what the fuck Iran wants. I really don't know. Oh yeah, and then Russia being tied up in Ukraine. There's just a lot of bad things going on right now that are very unfavorable for Iran.
More foreign, endless wars. And instead, why don't we focus on the problems at home? He talked about, obviously, illegal aliens. He talked about deportations, but he said trillions of dollars.
Do you still think we need to focus on diplomacy with Iran, or do you agree more with Ben Shapiro? I don't know why we can't do more diplomacy with Iran. I don't know why we can't all just get along in the Middle East. It seems kind of cringe. But one day, when we do Iranian history, we shall learn.
spent in Iraq, trillions spent in Afghanistan. And what did it get for us? Nothing. Dead soldiers, wounded soldiers. We got absolutely nothing out. You want to talk about destabilization? Well, I think those wars, the massive wars on terror, wars that, by the way, when I was in the United States military, I did participate in at least in an intelligence capacity. But what did that do to the region? It destabilized it. Syria, completely destabilized right now. Iraq, completely destabilized. And Afghanistan, the Taliban is even in a better position than they were. Syria, dead soldiers, had trillions of dollars spent in Iraq, trillions spent in Afghanistan. And what did it get for us? Nothing. Dead soldiers, wounded soldiers. We got absolutely nothing out. You want to talk about destabilization? Well, I think those wars, the massive wars on terror, wars that, by the way, when I was in the United States military, I did participate in at least in an intelligence capacity. But what did that do to the region? It destabilized it. Syria, completely destabilized right now. Iraq, completely destabilized. And Afghanistan, the Taliban is even in a better position than they were before we got involved.
I mean, it depends on what you're saying. Like, Assad being gone I think that's a favorable thing for the United States. I think the U.S. would view that as a positive outcome. No, I don't think Iraq is as fucked as it was 10 years ago when ISIS was creeping through. Although I can't speak to the current state of Iraq or how stable or unstable it is, but I don't think that the Syria example is great at all. I think the U.S., if they could have foreseen in the future that Assad would fall, I think it'd be like, oh, okay, fuck it, it's worth it.
Because they have all the U.S. military equipment that we left there. And so every time the U.S. gets involved in one of these things, it actually seems to make the situation much, much worse.
Okay, let's take a short break, panel. I'll come back to you for your reaction to this next interview I'm about to do. It's with the Iranian academic and former advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiating team, Mohammad Marandi. Professor Marandi, thank you for coming back on Uncensored. This is a pretty terrible situation for Iran. It looks like Israel has caught your military napping, caught your leaders napping. They've been asleep, it seems quite literally in some cases, as Israel launched this surprise attack, which has been so far stunningly successful and had comparatively small retaliation from Iran, which suggests that maybe you don't have the capability to do much about what is happening to your country.
Well, first of all, I have to point out some nonsense that your guest said. I fought in the Iran-Iraq War as a volunteer, and I was part of the war effort for 6 years, on and off. I was wounded 4 times, and I survived 2 chemical attacks. There was no children being pushed over minefields. These are myths that Westerners, Western media, Western elites have been promoting.
He's Iranian? Uh-oh. We would never, ever do that. We would never do any fucked up crazy shit. My understanding is the Iran-Iraq War was crazy. These two people fucking hated each other, and they both did as much unhinged shit as they fucking could. Yeah, but...
For many years, in order to demonize the Iranians and to portray us as fanatic. Right now, Piers, your friends, your Zionist allies, they bombed buildings belonging to the Iranian television. I'm in one of those buildings. And the guard right now is standing outside the door telling me to leave. And I was yelling at him, telling him to go. I'm going to finish this interview. We are not intimidated by you, your government, the United States, or the Israeli regime. This was a blatant act of aggression. People were murdered in Iranian radio and television just minutes ago. And I tweeted it, and your colleagues have seen it. And this building is also a target. Your allies target journalists. Your allies have murdered over 200 journalists, and you are complicit in this genocide.
Well, let me respond to that. Listen, I've seen you, Professor. All due respect, Professor. All due respect, Professor. I've seen you doing this kind of shtick in the last few days on all sorts of shows. And let me just respond. The reason that I actually think that Israel has a right to do what it is doing with your regime is that your regime has been the fulcrum for terrorism in the Middle East now for decades, through Hezbollah, through the Houthis.
Why are Arabs exempt from IDF conscription, but they can still volunteer? I think it's probably kind of a moral thing. It's like, well, Palestinian Arabs that live in Israel might not necessarily feel the same attachment to the state of Israel the same way the Jewish people do, so they're not forced to conscript, although I think they can sign up for the IDF if they want to, but they're exempt from the conscription stuff.
Through Hamas, it has done whatever it can do to destabilize the region, to terrorize Israel and anyone else it doesn't like. It's a draconian, oppressive, appalling regime, which is deeply unpopular with many Iranians. And every time I've seen you appear in the last few days, you've had a big smirk grin on your face, as if somehow you know better than everybody else, and that somehow we are misinterpreting your rulers and your regime, and you're all a bunch of really nice people who have nothing but good intentions for the rest of the world. Well, in fact, it's the complete opposite. And finally, Israel said enough, and they're coming after your nuclear capability because your own ruler, the Ayatollah, has made it clear that he would very much like to see Israel removed from this world. And if you hear that and you're in Israel, then you're going to take action to stop that happening. So that would be my response to you.
Uh-oh.
Well, if your rant is over, I point out that you are a dishonest person and a dishonest so-called journalist.
You can do stuff as much as you like.
But you are too cowardly. Be quiet for a moment and let me speak.
Don't tell me other way. If you're going to call me a coward, if you're going to call me a coward and a liar, then I won't be quiet on my own show. Especially not from someone like you who spews disinformation.
I am the one in this building that has been evacuated, and I'm only sitting here because of you. So allow me to speak.
Well, keep the ad hominem attached to yourself then. You're going to call me a liar and a coward. I'm going to jump in and take you on. You are
a coward. You are a coward. You did not come to Iran when I invited you, so you have no right to.
I wouldn't trust going to Iran. What on earth am I trust going to Iran? As your
guest said nonsense about.
As your guest in Iran, with your contacts with the Iranian regime, I wouldn't trust that as far as I can throw it.
So don't comment about Iran if you don't come here.
Well, let me give you some facts about your.
To be fair, I haven't heard of this. I don't know if Iran is in the business of like murdering people. I would never go to Iran, but that's more out of my own ignorance and fear than. Like, I don't know if Iran would actually murder people that were traveling. Now, it is funny because I feel like if this guy wanted to do a sick comeback, what was the name of the guy, Kamalji, who got chainsawed up and murdered in Saudi Arabia? Who was that? That wasn't an Iranian, was it? Who was it? Oh, fuck, what's the guy's name? Khashoggi? Oh no, he was assassinated at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Okay. But he was a Saudi journalist, dissident, author, and columnist. And then he fled, and they got him. And they dextered him. You should check out the Daily Show correspondent getting jailed in Iran. Okay. Iran maybe they do jail people. I just haven't heard of it as much, but it doesn't... I don't really think Iran is like, it's not like North Korea, or it's not like an unhinged terrorist state. Like, I feel like it's a little bit more akin to like Russia, but because they're Muslim and scary, I guess we view them as being more unhinged than I feel they actually are. But I don't know.
Your country. Let me give you some facts to see where I'm wrong here. Women face severe restrictions when it comes to marriage.
Like, sometimes when there are bad things that happen, but sometimes the bad thing is like a good thing. Like, people get mad at me for saying this, but I kind of brought it up with that. Well, people get mad at me. Nobody gets mad at me for saying this because it's my audience. Like, when I bring up like microaggressions, in a way, microaggressions show a big improvement, because if we're talking about microaggressions, then we're probably not lynching people anymore, right? So even if microaggressions are bad, it's probably an improvement from where we came. When Iran is like conducting warfare through proxies, or even Russia is conducting warfare sometimes through proxies, that's a good thing, because it shows that the country has the wherewithal to be like, well, I generally can't be attacking people directly because it makes me look really bad, so I need to conduct warfare through a proxy group so that I can have some kind of plausible deniability. Plausible deniability is good because it means you're looking for plausible deniability, which means you care to some extent about maintaining some facade of, you know, diplomatic relationships with other countries. So
divorce, inheritance, child custody, and so on. Compulsory veiling, punishable by flogging and prison sentences. Women punished for bad dressing, defined as exposing any body parts below the neck. Women banned from certain professions. They can't be judges. They can't be in certain positions in government.
Only as bad as Russia, yeah. They also imprison and torture people for nonsense. Occasionally they do, yeah, but it's not like, say, like ISIS, right? I think that a lot of people view every single theocratic Islamic regime, or every single, even the dictatorships that are secular in the Middle East, as being like ISIS, and they're not. ISIS is like some unhinged, that was some unhinged crazy shit. ISIS is like, we're going to your village and we're going door to door and we're like raping and murdering your entire fucking family on like levels of unhinged. That, like, everything is not ISIS, or I don't even think Al-Qaeda was as bad as ISIS. Those people were unhinged. Those people were crazy. But
and on independent political parties, civil society organizations, trade unions, LGBT people suffer systematic discrimination and violence. Closing shops that have so-called improperly veiled customers. Authorities censor media, jam certain television channels, continue to block or filter mobile apps, social media platforms. Executions, including those of children, torture, and other ill treatment are widespread and systematic. State television can often air torture-tainted confessions, arresting and sentencing people who break fast during Ramadan. Anyone who speaks out and protests against the regime can be subjected to the death penalty, flogging, prison terms, and other severe penalties. It doesn't sound like a great place for me to visit, with all due respect, Professor Marandi. So you can tell me that I'm a coward and I'm a liar, and I can tell you that you prop up, personally, you go on the airwaves and you disingenuously prop up and grotesquely defend a terrible regime, which is now getting, as many people see, its final comeuppance for constantly threatening Israel with getting a bomb and taking it out. And that's what this is about. You know it and I know it. And you also know that your regime has propped up the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. It has been the octopus with its tentacles of terrorism spreading all over the Middle East. So you can call me what you like, but what you can't do is deny what I just said.
Ooh.
You are a coward.
So you keep saying. So you keep saying.
You are a coward.
That's all you can say, isn't it? That's all you've got. That's all you got. Do one of your smart drinks.
You helped enable genocide in Gaza for 2 months. You don't want to let me talk. You don't want me to talk.
I do, but if all you're going to do is call me a coward and a liar, then why should I keep listening to that? It's pointless. It's what you've been doing on the airwaves for days.
Because you say nonsense.
Really? What was nonsense about anything? What was nonsense about anything I said?
Everything, but you just rant on, and you think this way you can convince your audience that while your allies are murdering Iranians, while your allies have...
Destiny is really going to support World War III. What a disappointment. If World War III is going to happen, I'd rather it happen on our terms than their terms. Anybody that just constantly screeches no civilian deaths over and over again, those are the true supporters of World War III. You're playing the appeasement game. I don't know how many times you have to have that happen in history for you to realize, oh shit, infinitely appeasing somebody who wants to destroy somebody else is an ineffective tactic. But I mean, who knows? Maybe we can do it 2 or 3 times. I don't know how many world wars the world can survive, but...
have murdered...
Yeah, your regime has been responsible for mass murder. Your regime has been responsible for mass murder.
Let me talk. You are afraid. You are afraid of letting me talk because you know that your narrative is falling apart.
Your narrative is I'm a coward and a liar. Have you got anything else in your tank? Any other arguments other than ad hominem?
Tweets a couple of weeks ago. But You won't let me talk. You're afraid of letting me talk. You're afraid.
I'm not afraid of you, Professor Marandi, but you look to me like you're afraid because you know now that the game is up.
Coward,
Iran's terrorism game is up.
I am in the Iranian radio television building, and it has been emptied because they say they're going to bomb this building. And I stay here for you. And you are responsible for justifying these criminal acts. And those colleagues of yours in Iran who are true journalists who died today, their blood is on your hand. And
they're
you
not on my
never
hands
escape
because
that.
I'm not
Just
part of the Israeli government or the IDF.
Gaza. You are too cowardly to let me talk.
You're just talking nonsense.
You're a coward.
You're talking
You won't let
nonsense.
me talk.
If I was a
You
coward, I
have
wouldn't have had you
destroyed
on.
every day.
I wouldn't have had you on if I
Yeah,
was a coward.
yeah,
But I knew what you would try and
it's all
do.
nonsense.
You try and
It's
do
all
this with all the
nonsense.
journalists
It's all
that you talk to, and I'm afraid it doesn't work anymore. Your stick doesn't work anymore. You defend the indefensible. You go ad hominem on every host you ever talk to. You were at it. It doesn't work anymore. Your stick doesn't work anymore. You defend the indefensible. You go ad hominem on every host you ever talk to. You were at it yesterday with a Sky News presenter, and I'm not going to take it from you. Sorry, just not going to.
Damn.
I don't care. You're a genocide enabler.
That's what you are. And you're a terrorism defender. You're a terrorism defender. Yeah, you defend a terrorist regime. That's what you do.
All the perfume of Arabia will never clean those hands of your peers. Kill. Keep on the killing. Keep on justifying murder. Keep on demonizing Iranians and Palestinians and Lebanese. And keep on killing. Keep on.
I demonize terrorists. What I do is demonize terrorists. And the main fulcrum, the main fulcrum of terrorism, the main terrorism for terrorism, which has been incredibly damaging to the people, to Palestinians, to Lebanese,
Glad
to
we cut away from the panel to do this.
regime.
Good one.
Professor, good to end with one of your smirks because they could all
Nice. Good one. Good one. Good use of time. Thank you.
Going to go back to the panel now.
Thank you.
Matthew said, I've talked to Professor Marandi a few times, and I watched him on the airways in the last few days, getting increasingly angry watching it because he is just a ludicrous individual who comes out and constantly defends the indefensible when it comes to that Iranian regime and has very close contacts with the rulers of Iran. But, it's an interesting thing that in between all the attacks he was spewing about me, the fact that he's sitting there now in a media building by the sound of it, which he's been told to evacuate, this is getting very serious and very real, isn't it, for people in Iran?
Very serious. And you reminded me a bit of, I don't know, comical allegory.
Yeah, I was exactly going to say that.
It's just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, completely
deluded and clearly shilling for the regime. And I just think of this incredible civilization that stretches back thousands of years with a GDP per capita of like $4,000. Israel's is over $50,000, a freer society.
Did he just say that we need to send him that video? Did you just use the GDP per capita number?
Wishes to develop and grow and be prosperous, rather than to live in this medieval, religious, fanatical worldview. As all the things that you said there, Piers, are completely true about the way they degrade women and repress free speech and all these other punitive measures that are just so awful to endure. One thing I'd throw in, though, is I agreed with the previous speaker on the panel who said that the Afghanistan war was a mistake. It would have been better not to have gone in. I think that's a fair counterfactual analysis. I actually was against the Iraq war too. But I think we should confront something that I don't think was confronted by the America First lobby, which is that if one agrees that Iran would like a nuclear weapon, as the Nuclear Weapon Atomic Energy Authority has said, 60% enrichment, getting very, very close. And if you also believe, as I do, that they would likely use it, then let's not pretend that America can stay out of this. Even a relatively small nuclear war would lead to a nuclear winter that would have an effect around the world of catastrophic proportions. It would affect farming all around the world. It would lead to famine. We can't allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. The idea that the counterfactual is staying out and allowing potentially a nuclear strike to occur would be catastrophic. I think we need to face up to that truth.
All right, shaking your head throughout all that.
Do you believe Iran was 3 days away from developing a nuclear weapon? 3 days away? No, but I think that they were approaching it. I think it may possibly within weeks of it. Yeah, sure.
I don't understand why you feel comfortable being such a defender of Iran.
I'm not. No. You see, that's total propaganda. Okay, so let's break it down one by one. Okay, so number one, when I see the Israeli ambassador earlier, he sounds like Baghdad Bob to me. Like Iran is the aggressor. No, Israel is clearly the aggressor. We all saw them start the war. Second of all, they say, oh my God, we're so worried about civilians. Israel always kills more civilians than
Can we just talk about the nuclear weapon aspect? We're just never going to do that. What a waste of time. I feel like everything I watch for politics now is a waste of time.
Opponents, and by an order of magnitude. For example, Hamas, terrible. They killed 36 kids on October 7th. Awful, right? Israel has killed 500 times as many kids. So this guy...
Why would you, how retarded is this? Like, October 7th, 36 kids. Like, are they the only ones that matter? Fuck you, bro. I don't want to be killed by any of these motherfuckers. I'm not a kid.
Pretending to be an Iranian expert is telling us about how much he's concerned about women. Israel has killed 20,000 women in Gaza. How about their rights? How about the rights of to those women to stay alive? How about all the civilians that are murdered in Iran?
Criticizing?
So when I see you guys...
Why are you criticizing?
I'm not avoiding it at all. I'm not avoiding it at all. Let me explain. Let me explain.
Why are you ducking saying criticism of Iran?
It's a simple question.
I'm not ducking it at all. You ready?
Yeah.
You ready? It's simple. I don't like the Iranian regime at all, okay? I'm an atheist now. They would kill me first. I got no interest in the Iranian regime. But the Israeli regime would also murder me. So I want you guys to be fair and balanced. So don't tell me that the Iranian regime is super dangerous to its neighbors while Israel actually attacks all of its neighbors, including Iran. So tell me about how dangerous Israel...
Somebody should capture, kidnap Cenk in a video game, FBI agent, video game, and they should say, this is what's going to happen, okay? This is what's going to happen. You don't have a choice, and you're being forced to do this, or everything, all your bank account is going to be emptied. No violence, okay? You're going to be given a ticket where you have to live stream your genuine political positions every single day for 1 hour for 2 weeks, and you can either do this in Tel Aviv or you can do this in Tehran. Where do you want to go? Are you seriously telling me that Cenk would feel safer in Tehran than he would feel in Tel Aviv? No shot. This is a delusional fucking take. This is an unfathomably fucking delusional take to have. Come the fuck on, dude.
Israeli terrorist regime is as it attacks civilians again and again and again, except that you say, well, Muslim lives don't really matter. That's why you guys don't count the Muslim civilians that Israel murders on a regular basis. So look, if we think the Iranian regime is bad, and it is, it's just like Saddam's regime was bad. Hold on, Ben, let me finish. So the North Korean regime is terrible. The Chinese regime runs concentration camps for Uyghur Turks. Those Turks are my people. The Russians invaded Ukraine. These are all terrible regimes. That doesn't mean we have to start a war with them. And it doesn't mean that America has to fight Israel's war for it.
Well, America isn't fighting it at the moment. At the moment,
fight your own wars.
But America
not $1, not one troop.
America is not involved in this war at the moment. Ben Ferguson.
Yeah, it's amazing you just said that Israel would kill him. I asked him 7, 8 times.
That's not true.
What would they murder you for? What would they murder you for? And I said over and over again, you said that Israel
they murder journalists more than any other country.
So
they
murdered
more journalists than World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and Afghanistan combined. They murdered more journalists than all other conflicts in the world combined. They murder Muslim Americans, 12 of them, and America does not defend American citizens in occupied territories. Israel murders Americans all the time, and America never defends us.
This is the problem. When you say things that are this egregious, everyone watches.
Hasn't Iran been weeks away for 30 years? I don't think so. Pretty sure this is the first time the International Atomic Energy Agency has made a statement about how close they are, number one. Number two, I mean, they have tried to approach nuclear weapons in the past, and then I'm pretty sure they've gotten kind of smacked around for it, right? Stuxnet, the huge computer virus or whatever, in the 2000s, I don't remember the year, maybe it might have been 2010 or whatever, I think significantly degraded a bunch of their enrichment capabilities. And then Obama jumped on in 2014 with the JCPOA. I don't remember the year for this. 2015? For the nuclear deal with Iran to try to slow down their progression towards nuclear weapons as well. So, I mean,
watching around the world is going to look at this and say, this guy is an idiot because you didn't answer the question. You said that Israel would murder you right now.
I said, what would they murder you for? Journalists than all other conflicts in the world combined.
You personally, you said they would murder you now. I'm not going to let up on this. What would they murder you for? You're telling me right now that you think Israel wants to find you and kill you right now where you are.
No. If I go to Israel, you said go to Israel. If I go to Israel, Israel would almost certainly murder. IDF already wrote my name on a bomb. It's not like.
Oh my God, dude, are you serious? Come the fuck on. What is this person donating for? Hold on, sorry. Mr. Marandi, I've been watching you. It's your first likes interview, and I've never donated. Just wanted to say, I hope the lawsuit doesn't shoot out of a cloud over your head every day. Don't let these plaintiffs get you down. Oh, I know where you're going that. Can't wait to see you in Houston. Love you. Thanks, buddy. Love you too.
Like they're hiding it, and they murder journalists more than any other country. In fact, all the other countries combined. That's a literal fact. And they murder Muslim Americans, 12 of them. And they didn't object under Biden. We don't object under Trump because you can murder American citizens only if you're Israel. The terrorist state of Israel is allowed to kill Americans. And what do we have to do? We have to give them another $311 billion. We have to start another war for them, like Iraq and spend $2 trillion. Why do the American people owe Israel hundreds of billions of dollars? Why do we owe them more wars? Why do we owe them dead American soldiers? We don't owe them anything. They owe us. Give me the $300 billion back. Give me the $300 billion back. You owe us. I don't owe you. And Ben, you're supposed to be an American, not an Israeli. Look at me and Jack. Me and Jack don't agree on anything else. But we agree that we should serve America. I say Americans first, not Israelis. Stop the war. Look at MAGA. Steve Bannon all said stop the war. Don't ask for war.
Why are we quoting MAGA? Bannon, he said? Bro, are you okay? What?
Look at me and Jack. Me and Jack don't agree on anything else. But we agree that we should serve America. I say Americans first, not Israelis. Stop the war. Look at MAGA. Steve Bannon all said stop the war. Don't ask for war. Here's the left and the right uniting saying we don't want war.
Let Ben speak.
Number one, my foreign policy has changed drastically from after 9/11. I don't think we should go into Iraq, Afghanistan. If I could have a redo, I would change what I thought about that. I've said that very clearly for years now on TV. But no, I said I've changed my foreign policy. When you make mistakes and you see what happens, it's okay to change. It's called growing up. All right, you learn from your mistakes. I'm not in favor of invading America into Iran. So let me say that first, so you put words in my mouth. Second thing, I've seen 2 hostage videos today. One from the guy that's in Iran right now, and you. And I don't know why you act like there's a country that is running terrorism in the Middle East, Iran, who's chanting death to Israel. By the way, death to America. They chant death to America too. Okay, and why you act like they're not a threat to the Middle East and to American interests over there. That's why Donald Trump said yesterday. That's why Donald Trump said yesterday. If you come after, yes, I do. I do think Iran's a threat just because they helped kill.
I'm pretty sure that most of the American troops that died in Iraq during the occupation, I wish I could find this number again. Fuck, this is just, it was either a profile piece I was reading on Soleimani, or it was some other thing I was reading about the Syrian civil war. But I'm pretty sure most of the American troops that died in the occupation of Iraq afterwards were due to Iranian proxy groups that were being supported by the IRGC, that Soleimani was leading. I think that's why we killed him. The idea that, I mean, you could say they don't represent a threat to us now, I guess, because we don't have the same presence in the Middle East, if that's what he wants to argue.
Over there. That's why Donald Trump said yesterday. That's why Donald Trump said yesterday. If you come after, yes, I do. I do think Iran's a threat just because they helped kill American soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. They trained the damn terrorists.
No, I asked Jack. I asked American.
I know personally. I know people that died serving their country in Iraq and Afghanistan. I just went to Fort Bragg and went to where the 82nd.
Yeah, because you sent them to die on behalf of Israel.
I'm not screwing around with this. Do not tell me
you sent them to die on behalf of Israel. Ben, I had these debates with you on the Iraq war. I had these debates with you on the Iraq war. You were 100% wrong then. You're 100% wrong now. You sent American kids to die on behalf of Israel then, and you want to send American kids to die on behalf of Israel.
Let me bring in
Jack.
Let me bring in Jack, please. Let me bring in Jack.
Speak up here.
Let me bring in Jack. Jack, final word to you.
This guy's a fucking idiot. This guy was like a Navy intelligence officer, got fucking I think kicked out after a year in the military, some bullshit. I don't even know I don't remember why he left, but he pretends that he had access to every hidden file, and he's just an absolute clown. But this is Jack Posobiec. You see him on Twitter a lot. Shouted out at an event before where he was also stupid.
Well, certainly they're a threat, but in the sense that they're a threat because the United States is currently sending the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier from the Asia Pacific, from Westpac, over to the Middle East. So, by the way, this is the first time that China now has more aircraft carriers in the Pacific than the United States. The first time it's ever happened. Now you're going to have those 5,000 sailors on that aircraft carrier, plus the other 5,000 that are on the Carl Vinson, potentially sitting within range of everything that Iran has. This is exactly what I've been talking about. So the threat that are on the Carl Vinson, it's the first time it's ever happened. Now you're going to have those 5,000 sailors on that aircraft carrier, plus the other 5,000 that are on the Carl Vinson, potentially sitting within range of everything that Iran has. This is exactly what I've been talking about. So the threat to American lives is, and I think it's right there, I think it's what you're saying, it's because America is getting involved in a war that's not ours.
Can I ask a question of Jack and Shank, just quickly? You say it's a war that isn't yours. If you were convinced, let me ask you a hypothetical, that Iran was close to getting a nuclear weapon. If Iran was close to getting a nuclear weapon, as the UN inspectors say,
it's just the number one, 75 IQ. Just whenever it's hypothetical. You should be committed to some kind of mental institution or insane asylum, or at the very least banned from having any kind of public, voice for anything. If you are we really, we're really doing that now? Hypothetical. What? Hypothetical.
Let me ask you a direct question. Do you then think if America was the only country that had the capability to degrade and destroy Iran's nuclear capacity, would it then be in American interest to intervene?
That's a decent on-the-point question. Will either of these two people answer it? Israel already has nukes. What about Israel? They already have nukes. Israel got nukes. And America got nukes.
So should America go around and blow up all the nuclear sites that aren't American? Should we attack China? Should we attack Russia? Should we attack France?
They already have nukes, you fucking retard. What?
Should we attack the UK? All of them? Is that your contention?
So the UK is our ally, and France is our ally. What?
So you would okay, so it's a consistent position.
Oh, Israel! No, you gotta check. Yes, I come. Oh, I come everywhere. Thank you, Jen. Yes.
You would permit. You think it's in America's interests?
No, you permit Iran to get you're trying to Kafka trap me right now. You're trying to Kafka trap me, and you're trying to say, well, if you agreed to this hypothetical that I asked.
Kafka trapped me. It's a very, 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 very simple question. Okay. You actually seventh generation incest bred dipshit. At the actual experiment, the ideally bred phenotype of the most retarded, poisonous, cancerous fucking retard that is part of our media system right now for somebody who the fuck knows. This, an actual degenerated human being. You're trying to trap me by asking me a hypothetical. You're trying to trap me.
You're trying to Kafka trap me right now. You're trying to Kafka trap me, and you're trying to say, well, if you agreed to this hypothetical that I asked you, then you must also. No, I'm not playing that game. I'm not playing that game right now. You're saying in a hypothetical situation, should America attack someone? To your point, they do not have weaponized nuclear capability or uranium.
Imagine if the whole world ran this way, right? Why are we launching all these planes and everything today? Well, they're going to do a training exercise. Are they fighting anyone? Well, no. It's training. It's like practice. So what? They're fighting hypothetical opponents. Ground them. Don't waste the money. Oh, okay, my bad. What's that noise? Oh my God, it's a fire alarm. Is there a fire? Well, no, we're doing a fire drill. It's a hypothetical fire? No, get rid of that. We're not doing that. Why do we have giant chambers where we run cars into the wall? Well, it's to test them for safety features and stuff, right? So what? But I mean, there's not even people in this. Well, yeah, it's testing car crashes. So hypothetical car crashes? Are you fucking serious? How does he think you design any policy or any forward-looking anything ever? I don't even know why I'm asking these questions. These aren't real people. None of these people are real people.
Uranium that is at the point of weaponization at 90%, which they could use for an atomic bomb. They do not have that. They have 60%. So you're saying even if they had 90%,
60% is already significantly over what they should have. Number one, and number two, I'm pretty sure once you're at 60%, it's much easier from 60 to 90 than it was to go from 5 to 60 or whatever.
Which, by the way, doesn't sit with the DNI Gabbard's assessment and the entire assessment of the intelligence agencies. Okay. That Iran is not currently developing weapons of mass destruction. They're only enriching uranium. So you're saying, oh, well, that's totally fine. You've never even asked me what I think.
They're only enriching uranium. What? They're just enriching uranium. We don't even know this guy's about to go murder people. All we've seen is him buying masks, shredding all of his IDs, getting gloves and handcuffs, doing drills every day where he's screaming, hands up or I'll kill you. We don't know what he's about to do. What else? What are they enriching the uranium for?
So you're saying even if they had 90%, which by the way doesn't sit with the DNI Gabbard's assessment and the entire assessment of the intelligence agencies that Iran is not currently developing weapons of mass destruction. They're only enriching uranium. So you're saying, oh, well, that's totally fine. You've never even asked me what I think. You're trying to play this game where
he literally is asking you what you think. If you thought they were going for nuclear weapons, should they intervene? That's literally him asking. It's giving you a chance to answer the question.
I've been asking myself. I'm not trying to play any game. I've been asking myself the question a lot over the last few days. Once I read the report that Iran had been disseminating.
I'm the same as Matthew. I read that report, and what was crystal clear from that report is that there have been constant lies and obfuscation from the Iranian regime in relation to the nuclear program.
From the Israeli regime.
Clearly, they believed that they were being lied to in their ability to report properly about what was going on. They also believed that uranium enrichment was now at a level where it was quite likely and possible that Iran could have a full nuclear bomb imminently, weeks, months, whatever that period may be. And in that circumstance, I took a view, in a way that I'd be very critical of the Israeli government for what's going on in Gaza at the moment, but I took a view that if you are Israel right now and you have Iran with the atomic agency saying they are getting perilously close to being able to create a nuclear bomb, that is a time where you may decide that is a time to stop them. And that appears to be what they're trying to do. So we're going to leave it there. We've run out of time, guys. I'm sorry.
No, I was asked a question. This is the same lies that Israel fed us about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
All right.
The same hypotheticals. Oh, what if Iraq has weapons of mass destruction?
True. Israel's who made us attack Iraq. He's almost there. Embrace your inner Middle Eastern identity and blame everything in the Jews. You're so close. Just embrace it. Just do it. Do it. Embrace it. Okay? The Jews are such a fun scapegoat for everything. Please go.
Oh, here's fake intelligence telling you that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. This is how Israel lied us into a war before. And then they always do hypotheticals like, oh, what if the Palestinians say that we don't have a right to exist? No, the Israeli cabinet has voted that Palestinians don't have a right to exist.
Okay.
All their hypotheticals are what Israel actually does. What if Iran has a nuke? Israel actually has a nuke.
Okay.
Israel is the most aggressive country and the most likely to use a nuclear weapon.
There it is.
We have to get out of Israel's control.
Okay, I've run out of time, guys. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to leave it there. I appreciate you joining me.
Not $1, not one troop.
We've gone well over time.
$1, not one troop. Nice. I love this new saying he's got.
Appreciate you all joining me. Thank you very much. Well, joining me now is Mossad, the editor-in-chief at Deterrence. Great to have you back on Uncensored. Last time you came on recently, we reached agreement over what is going on.
Committee is going to be completely anti these attacks as well.
In Gaza, I concurred with your view that it was now crossing almost every line. It wasn't just my view, the view of former Israeli prime ministers, of allies of Israel, and so on. But we had a separate situation here. And I'm just curious, I've seen what you've been saying publicly about this Israel attack on Iran. If you're Israel and you see that report from the Atomic Agency, which appears to suggest that Iran has been lying, obfuscating, covering up, not allowing proper inspections and so on, and now appears to have reached 60% enrichment of uranium, which is the next stage it can reach, where now it can be imminent, it can be within months, that it could potentially get to nuclear power. Can you at least, without agreeing with it, can you understand why Israel has felt threatened by that report?
So, Piers, thanks for having me back. And I'm glad you started by asking about the IAEA report, because I know you brought it up with your panel as well. And I just want your viewers at home to be clear, because...
Oh, God. He's going to discredit the IAEA. That's what he's going to do. I can feel it. I just got that aura. I can see his aura. I can read it. I'm just kidding. He's not going to do that. He wouldn't do that.
You described it accurately a moment ago, what the report says. I read the 22-page report, came out May 31st, declassified. But on Friday, I was disappointed to see you tweeting about, you said the report exposes an imminent nuclear threat from Iran, which could justify a preemptive strike. What we saw on Thursday night from Israel was not a preemptive strike. It was a preventive strike, which is illegal under international law. It's what George Bush and the neocons claimed the Iraq war was.
Wait, what's the difference between those? What's the difference between a preemptive and a preventative? Are these actually defined terms somewhere?
Against Saddam Hussein, which you and I opposed, rightly so. And that IAEA report does not expose an imminent nuclear threat. It says what you just said it says. It says that they haven't been cooperating very well. It says their level of cooperation has been, quote, less than satisfactory. It says some of their technical answers about their program have lacked credibility. It says they've impeded some of the inspectors. It says that they were working on some kind of military program pre-2003, which is what US intelligence has also said. Those are all bad things, Piers. You and I can both agree those are bad things, that Iran should not be doing those things. And the IAEA board voted to say they're in breach of their obligations. But that's not an imminent nuclear threat. The report does not say Iran poses an imminent nuclear threat. Your tweet was wrong on Friday.
Well, I think it says, I just said, when it says 60% enrichment of uranium, it's the next stage. Yeah. That somebody who wants to create a nuclear bomb, right? So imminent, look, what do I mean by imminent? As I said in the panel, it could be weeks, months, a year, whatever, but they've reached a stage of enrichment. But they have the capability to take it to another stage and create a bomb.
Yes. So let's find more.
The agency's JCPOA-related verification and monitoring has been seriously affected by the cessation of implementation by Iran of its nuclear-related commitments under the JCPOA. The situation has been exacerbated by Iran's subsequent decision to have all of the agency's JCPOA-related surveillance and monitoring equipment removed. The agency has lost continuity of knowledge in relation to the production and current inventory of centrifuges, rotors, and bellows, heavy water, and UOC, which it will not be able to restore as a result of not having been able to perform JCPOA-related verification and monitoring activities for more than 4 years. Iran's decision to remove all of the agency's equipment previously installed in Iran for JCPOA-related surveillance and monitoring activities has also had detrimental implications for the agency's ability to provide assurance of the peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. It has also been more than 4 years since Iran stopped provisionally applying its additional protocol. Therefore, throughout this period, Iran has not provided updated declarations, and the agency has not been able to conduct complementary access to any sites and other locations in Iran. The significantly increased production and accumulation of highly enriched uranium by Iran, the only non-nuclear weapon state to produce such nuclear material, is of concern. The Director General will continue to report as appropriate. As of the 17th of May, 2025, the inventory of uranium enriched up to 60% of U-235 in forms other than U-6 remains at 2 kilograms of uranium, as previously reported, consisting of 1.6 kilograms of uranium in irradiated targets, verified at TRR on the 17th of May, 2025, and 0.4 kilograms of uranium in liquid and solid scrap, verified at FPFP on May 17th, 2025. I don't know. I wonder how much you need for bombs again. How much U-235 do you need for a modern nuclear warhead? This course thinks it's 2 to 4 kilograms of U-235. Damn. Well, damn. As of the May 17, 2025, the agency estimated that the total enriched uranium stockpile in the form of UF6 of 8,413.3 kilograms comprised. So 408.6 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60%. Damn. How long to go from 60% enriched to higher? Enriching uranium in its natural state to between 3 to 5% U-235 and LEU enrichment levels used in most nuclear power plants takes a lot of time and resources. It's relatively easier and quicker to then enrich LEU to 90% needed for weapons-grade uranium. Once a country can enrich uranium at all, the breakout time is often just months. I wonder if there's a video we can watch this. Hold on one sec.
Freedom for so much more.
I swear some of the most delusional people I meet are attractive women, because if you were a guy, if you were a guy and tried to talk to a girl that looked like you would actually have no clue what's going on. Like there's zero. Could you even imagine if you were a guy and tried to talk to a girl that looked like you? Like how would that even go, or what your life would look like, or who you are as a person?
I don't know.
It's a completely different world. It's a totally different world. It's.
I don't know.
Anyone knows what I'm saying? Like it's crazy.
My alter ego is a country boy, and he gets girls all the time.
Your alter ego that you make up in your head? Yeah.
No, shit.
Yeah, your alter ego you make up in your mind, it sure pulls a lot. Yeah.
Well, no, here's the thing. Because I have a mind of a girl, I know what gets a girl. You know?
No, you don't. No.
Yes, I do.
No.
It's not, absolutely not true.
I can pull a lot of. I can pull a lot
No
of times.
shot.
I'm telling you.
Zero shot.
Yes. No.
No. Some of the worst dating advice comes from married people and attractive women.
Holy. Absolutely true. Enriching uranium 235. Will you cover Trump telling Tehran to evacuate after? What do you mean cover it? I read the truth. There's nothing else to cover. What do you? It's a truth. It's a thing that you could read in 2 seconds. What is there to cover? Going nuclear part 6. Jesus Christ. This guy's got a whole ass video series on it.
Hello, it's Scott Manley here with part 6 of Going
Yikes, not American, don't care. Just kidding.
Nuclear. If you've been following the series so far, then welcome back. It's been a while, but I've been doing my research. Now, you might have some ideas about how we might go about building a nuclear weapon. Today, we're going to cover the biggest roadblock, the refining of the fissile material used in the core.
If I didn't Biden rejoin the JCPOA, I don't even know if he would have been able to. I don't know if he like. It's a little bit schizophrenic to go from, oh hey, we are leaving this, we have a deal with you guys, and then Trump's like, we're leaving the deal, and then the next person's like, let's go back to the deal.
The isotopes used in nuclear weapons are uranium-235 and plutonium-239, and the production of usable quantities of these materials represented the largest parts of the Manhattan Project.
Wait, hold on, real quick. Would it be accurate to say, if you had like 100 kilograms that was 60% U-235, if you were to enrich it to 100%, would you just delete 40 kilograms of it? So like 100 kilograms of 60% enriched stuff, if it were to go up to 100% enriched, you would just be getting rid of 40% basically? Is that how? Okay, it's not like anything else happening. Okay.
It takes hundreds of tons of uranium and massive industrial operations to produce enough material to make a bomb. The primary uranium processing facility was in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the primary plutonium production facilities were in Hanford, Washington. It's worth checking out this video over at Cody's lab, showing the effort required to refine uranium ore down to less than a gram of uranium.
How do you find truth in foreign policy situations with states frequently lying and obfuscating? I can never take a position. Because states don't really... It's not about just lying. They say things for particular reasons. Like that's like... It's never random. They might say things, but it's not like they're just saying random things. If they lie, it's for a reason. Wait. Okay. But especially today, there's just so many cell phones and there's so much video and so many statements and so many other people reporting on things. It's kind of hard for them to if you're really just reading the news, it's hard to figure out. Or I'm sorry, it's not hard to figure out what's actually going on generally.
metal. And this isn't atypical of many ore refining processes, by the way. Scaling up a process like this to the industrial levels needed to produce the tons of uranium required to build a reactor needed a whole lot of specialized installations. However, the chemical refining hardware
The lefties are going after Ezra Klein's partner now? Why? He was the co-author of their book. Isn't that kind of normal? Oh, like partner, like girlfriend or wife. Oh. Inflation is your fault. If people are so mad about high prices, why do they keep buying so many expensive things? Guys, listen up. I'm not even mad at people anymore because my expectations of an average person are dead now. Okay? I understand that when we were kids, we learned that you were supposed to write a catchy headline in order to get people to read your stuff. Journalists, I'm so sorry, but you guys have to change you have to change how you approach journalism. You cannot write catchy headlines anymore. You can't do this because most people are fucking retarded and they will only read the headline. Okay? Now, 30 years ago, this might be a provocative, catchy headline. Inflation is your fault. If so many people are mad about high prices, why do you keep buying? Oh my God. Hold on, what do they mean? And then you'd read it. Nowadays, people will literally take a fucking picture. They will take a picture of the article and they will pretend that this was the whole point. Okay? Stop. You can't do this. Don't do it anymore. She didn't write the headline? Fine. Then to the editors. It doesn't change what I'm saying at all. This is, you can't have catchy headlines anymore, okay? You just, don't even write headline. Don't even write it all, okay? Just do TikTok shorts.
was small compared to the equipment required for the enrichment of uranium from the 0.7% uranium-235 to the 80% uranium-235 used in the weapons. The difference of 3 neutrons doesn't amount to much, and it's commonly stated that different isotopes of the same element are chemically identical, which isn't strictly true. But for uranium, the differences are small enough to have not been considered useful for isotope separation during the Manhattan Project. One thing that all the enrichment processors used in the Manhattan Project have in common is that they work with gases, so that each individual uranium atom is isolated from every other one, and they can move freely to be separated. Being a heavy metal, uranium has a rather high boiling point, so instead, the enrichment processes would work with molecules like uranium hexafluoride. The boiling point of uranium hexafluoride is about 50 degrees centigrade.
Do you think you could make a nuclear device? Probably, but it would take me a long time to enrich the uranium, right? Even a small amount. I would have to hold it out like this and then spin in my chair like as fast as possible. And then I would have somebody to catch the U-238 that's flying off and for me to hold on like...
which makes it quite manageable from a thermal point of view. Also, fluorine having only one stable isotope meant that...
But headlines should be truth. Like the headlines should convey the main point. Otherwise, it's creating rage bait culture. That headline was truthful, but the headline was obviously provocative, right? Like, in a very technical sense, inflation is the fault of people buying things. Like, if people would just stop buying things, then the prices would either go down or they'd stop making the thing, right? But like, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, you know? Like, it's kind of like saying homelessness is your fault. If people are so mad about being homeless, why don't they just pay their rent on time? Which is like, it's like strictly true, but it's obviously missing the point. So obvious that it's trying to be provocative, which means without ever having read this article, you know what, fuck it, let's test it. Maybe I'm an asshole. I'll accept it, I'm an asshole. My guess is going to be this article probably has to do with how do Americans simultaneously complain about inflation but seem to have enough money to sustain industries where inflation is high. That seems to be paradoxical. If prices are going up and people are complaining about being able to not afford things, then how are the prices able to be sustained at a high point? And my guess is going to be that the article probably explores that. How are certain industries able to stay afloat even as prices go up? How are consumers able to afford it even as they complain about inflation? That's my guess, but maybe I'm wrong. Inflation is your fault. Atlantic. And it's from 2023. Nice. You would think with prices as high as they are that Americans would have tempered their enthusiasm for shopping of late, that they would have pulled back spending on luxury items, and they would have sought out budget and basic options, bought smaller packages, fewer things. It's not what happened. Consumer spending rose 0.2% after accounting for higher prices. Okay, also, so one, this is a huge bait. No, I'm sorry. Hold on. I was going to say it's a huge bait because this was, oh my God. Time. I was going to say this is 2023, so this is before COVID, but that's not even remotely true. COVID was like fucking 5 years ago. Oh, Jesus. Is there like an aware sound? Okay, so this was after COVID. Okay. This is not what has happened. Consumer spending rose 0.2% after accounting for higher prices in October, the most recent month for which the government has data. Online shopping jumped 7.8% over the Thanksgiving long weekend, more than analysts had anticipated. The sales of new cars, dishwashers, cruise vacations, jewelry, all things people tend to give up when they are watching their budget remain strong. Consultants keep anticipating a recession precipitated by the death of the consumer. Thus far, the consumer is staying alive. Oh my God, I don't know what thing. People hate inflation, just not enough to spend less. This is one of the central tensions in today's economy, which things are going great, yet everyone is miserable, and in some ways, Americans have nobody to blame but themselves. 3 years ago, the pandemic gnarled supply chains around the world, leading to shortages of many consumer goods. At the same time, the American government transferred roughly $1.8 trillion to households in the form of generous unemployment insurance benefits and amped up child tax credits, stimulus checks, and delayed or forgiven student loan payments. Less supply, more demand. It was a recipe for higher costs. Nobody saw this. Costs really rose. A dozen eggs went from $1.33 the summer after the pandemic hit. The price topped out at $4.83 last winter. Gas prices nearly tripled. Used cars started trading for as much as or even more than new cars. The cost of leasing an apartment surged. The cost of buying a house went up even more. More recently, prices have been driven up, if more slowly, by the strong labor market. The unemployment rate is as low as it ever gets, and has been for some time, with labor shortages in a number of sectors: air traffic control, education, retail, trucking, police, and public safety, nursing, plumbing, and electric. The tight labor market has forced employers to pay workers more, boosting wages, particularly at the lower end of the income spectrum. Real hourly earnings for workers in the 10th percentile of wage distribution went up more than 8% in the past 3.5 years. And economists David Autor, Arindrijit Dubey, and Annie McGrew found, and average wages have grown faster than average prices. Sticker shock is real, and in surveys people say that they are trading down because of cost pressures, but in fact they're spending more than they ever have, even after accounting for higher prices. They're spending not just on the necessities, but on fun stuff: amusement parks, Uber Eats. People just have a lot of money on hand. More broadly, they seem to be less likely to change their purchasing habits in response to price shifts, even when budgets are leaner. A raft of recent studies have found that American consumers have become less price sensitive in recent decades. Households are using fewer coupons. People are spending less time mulling over what to buy when they're shopping. Why? Maybe because although prices of many consumer goods are higher than they were a few years back, they're still much, much more affordable than they were a few decades ago, thanks to globalized trade and manufacturing advances. The price of television has dropped more than 90% since the late 1990s. Your grandparents might have gone to 3 different grocery stores to get the best deals. Would it really be worth it for you to do the same today? Maybe not, especially not if you have a job. It used to be much more common for one partner in marriage to make money and the other to raise the kids and spend the cash. Today, working age women are only a little less likely than men to be employed, giving them less time and energy to pinch pennies. Another theory: consumers might have become more brand loyal, less willing to trade Coke for Squirt, or Nike for Skechers. Perhaps, I guess this is some other soda. Perhaps that's because companies have gotten better at tailoring products to people's tastes. Perhaps it's just inertia. People get more stuck in their ways as they get older, as the average American has. You'll pay more for Starbucks coffee because you always get Starbucks coffee. Should be good news that Americans are better off than they were pre-pandemic. It should be good news that people can afford more, even if prices are higher. Then why is everyone so mad about prices? Higher prices are just vexing, making people do mental math every time they shop. Economists point to other psychological factors too. People seem to think of their swelling bank accounts as a result of their own hard work, but consider cost increases someone else's screw up. Nor do average consumers see inflation as something that might benefit them by, say, eating away the value of their mortgage payments. People want to blame Joe Biden for their bills. They want to accuse stores of gouging them. Though the evidence for greedflation is scant. The strange truth is that people really are in a more comfortable position, even if they're not happy about it. It's not like a weak economy, stagnant wages. Cramming consumer spending and cheaper stuff would be better after all. Okay. This is a reasonable article. This is fine. Okay. Squirt is what they call Sierra Mist, is what Sierra Mist is called after they sued a porn start because she had the same name and lost. There was a porn star called Sierra Mist? Is that true? Wait, is there no more Sierra Mist? No, Sierra Mist is now Starry. Okay.
The only thing different in the molecular mass was the uranium. However, squeezing all those fluorine atoms around a single uranium atom does make them much more interested in jumping off onto other reactive substances, and much of the scary fluorine-rich compounds mentioned in the book Ignition owe their existence to the fluorine chemistry experiments in the Manhattan Project. Another molecule used was uranium tetrachloride, which was less corrosive to the hardware, but all the production also generated things like phosgene gas as a side product. This was the input material to the first enrichment system used during the Manhattan Project, the calutron, which is essentially a mass spectrometer designed to electromagnetically separate a beam of uranium atoms passing through a magnetic field. The different massed isotopes get deflected by a slightly different amount, and collectors would be set up to accumulate each isotope. The first such device was constructed using the old magnet from the cyclotron at the University of California, Berkeley, hence the name Cal-U-tron. An early test run of this calutron in January 1942 produced 2 micrograms per hour of 25% enriched uranium, and this would eventually be scaled up to 50 micrograms per hour. Industrializing this process ultimately entailed the construction of over 1,000 calutrons, and with the war on, there was actually a shortage of copper to make wires for the electromagnets. Instead, somebody came up with the bright idea to substitute silver, supplied by the US Treasury, 13.3 thousand tons of silver, or 430 million troy ounces, because the US Treasury only worked in ounces.
Probably because he's not doing political stuff, he won't bring this up. But the shortage of copper, when they were trying to make a lot of this early enrichment stuff, this is part of the reason why the FBI and the CIA, unfortunately, allowed so much crack to spread through poor neighborhoods, is because as people became addicted to crack, they were really good at chopping down power poles and extracting copper wires and shit, and they would sell that copper back to the FBI and the CIA, who would then deliver it to the nuclear program in exchange for giving them money for crack. That's why they always go after copper wiring.
Technically, this was a loan from one part of the US government to another, and it was supposed to be returned after the project. There are some great descriptions of the lengths they went to in their efforts to recover silver, such as ripping up and burning the floorboards of the workshops and collecting the melted silver that ran off. Ultimately, they would only lose a few kilograms. While the calutrons would contribute to the Manhattan Project, they generally wouldn't be used to enrich uranium after the war, as other methods proved to be much more cost effective. And I should probably take a moment to explain efficiency. All of these enrichment processes use energy to take an input mixture and separate it into 2 outputs, with one being more enriched than the other. Now, the calutrons are an example of an enrichment system which takes lots of power but also produces a large increase in the enrichment. Other processes might take less power but also produce a lower level of enrichment. So comparing the enrichment efficiency of these isn't simple. But scientists came up with a number called the separative work unit, which can be applied equally to all systems. Now, it's not work in the traditional physics sense. Rather, it's a measure of the energy required for a given input and output composition, and different processes can be compared by the energy requirements for each unit. Usually this is measured in kilowatt hours. Now, early systems required megawatt hours per SWU. Modern efficient systems are about 100 kilowatts per unit. It takes less than 10 units to manufacture a kilogram of reactor-grade uranium, and it takes about 200 units to make a kilogram of weapons-grade material. So calutrons prove to be exceptionally power-hungry, due mainly to the energy required to ionize the material. Instead, most current methods exploit the small difference in average velocities in the uranium isotopes in the gas phase. Molecules containing the lighter uranium-235 will have slightly higher velocities than those containing uranium-238. The majority of uranium enrichment during the Manhattan Project used gaseous diffusion, whereby uranium hexafluoride would be allowed to diffuse through a permeable membrane. Now, Graham's law shows that the rate of diffusion is inversely proportional to the square root of the molecular mass. So on the far side of the membrane, you will have slightly more lighter uranium-235, only a tiny bit more, roughly a 0.1% change in the isotopic ratios from input to output. To enrich uranium up to weapons-grade ratios requires thousands of stages arranged one after the other. The Manhattan Project also used something called thermal diffusion.
When I've said in the past, you can't really hide like going after nuclear weapons. The enrichment process is what I was talking about. But you can see the requirement for. I don't think it was in this one. It was in the other one. Oh no, maybe it is here. Oh yeah. When it says IR6 cascades, I'm assuming that cascade is referring to like a cascade of centrifuges. I think it says here like. Enrich up to 20%, U-235 into up to 350 IR6 centrifuges in one, set up to 2 interconnected cascades to enrich U-6, blah, 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 into 870 IR6 centrifuges. Like, there's a lot of fucking, it's a lot of equipment. But you can see it talking about all that shit in here.
And this worked on the principle where a thermal gradient in the gas will lead to the heavier molecules collecting near the cold end. The Manhattan Project used long cascades of 15-meter tall columns with a heated core and cooled outer walls. Since the warm gases tend to rise, the lower mass uranium-235 would tend to migrate upwards. After a great deal of development work, it was realized that the process would never be competitive with gaseous diffusion, and it would be the only thermal diffusion plant ever built. However, it was used as the first stage of a multi-tier enrichment process used by the Manhattan Project. Thermal diffusion would enrich natural uranium up to about 2% enrichment. That would then be fed into a gaseous diffusion plant, which would bring the uranium-235 up to about 23%. Finally, this would be fed to the calutrons, which brought the enrichment up to about 85%. All the experimental processes had been combined in a race to produce the fissile material as quickly as possible. But after the war, the focus shifted to efficiency, and gaseous diffusion was the clear winner in this case. The thermal diffusion columns were shut down and the calutrons transitioned to isolating other isotopes. The main process building at Oak Ridge became the largest building in the world. It would be 50% larger than the Pentagon, containing almost 3,000 diffusion stages. And it wasn't the only building on site, with dozens of other support systems housed in their own massive buildings. Since World War II, however, the gas centrifuge process has been developed, and it has become the dominant process since it's about 50 times more energy efficient than gas diffusion. It was originally developed in the Soviet Union by German scientists, and the process uses gas dynamics inside a rapidly rotating cylinder. The process actually shares much in common with the thermal diffusion columns, with the...
Is all this stuff considered chemistry or physics? I don't actually know. Maybe nuclear physics, but I imagine there's going to... Actually, I think it would be physics. I think it would be nuclear physics. I think chemistry is generally studying like chemical reactions. So things that have to do with breaking the bonds between molecules and stuff. So like how do atoms connect to other atoms and share electrons and stuff like that. And I think nuclear physics has to do with breaking stuff inside of an atom, generally speaking. But there's also going to be some... will there be some combination? I mean, there's going to be combinations of obviously both. I imagine you can't do this without any knowledge of chemistry whatsoever, but I think nuclear stuff refers to breaking stuff inside of an atom, and then chemical stuff refers to stuff between atoms, kind of, I think. Can you call this nuclear chemistry? I was going to say it seems like nuclear chemistry, but I don't know if I've ever heard that term used before, nuclear chemistry. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, there's probably a decent amount of overlap.
The lighter isotopes migrating upwards towards the top, but the rapid rotation serves to enhance the effect of the mass difference between the isotopes. The faster rotation, the better the performance. Of course, the exact numbers are classified, but it's believed that a typical cylinder may be about 10 to 20 centimeters wide and rotating somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 times per second, generating centripetal accelerations of about 1 million G. This puts the surface velocity at supersonic speeds. But of course, the whole assembly is contained inside an evacuated casing with magnetic bearings used to eliminate friction. The tolerances required for constructing these are extremely strict. Any imperfection is amplified by the acceleration involved, and there are stories of centrifuge systems being sabotaged by deliberate mishandling, by touching the equipment in the wrong way. There's even some evidence that the Stuxnet malware was created to attack the old uranium nuclear program by infecting computers controlling the centrifuges used for enrichment, uranium enrichment, and intentionally running the centrifuges in a manner intended to destroy them. Beyond all these gas processes, I was surprised to discover that a chemical process was investigated and a pilot plant was built. It turns out that in mixture with different ionic oxidation states, the lighter isotope prefers to go to the more ionized levels. For example, the Chemex process used uranium ions in hydrochloric acid, and so uranium, the U4 plus ions would tend to more likely be uranium-235 compared to the uranium-3 plus ions, and that enabled useful enrichment after multiple passes. But the efficiency was about 375 kilowatt hours per separative work unit, which makes it a fine improvement over gas diffusion, but ultimately it could not compete with centrifuges. Laser enrichment is...
Do you like Black MIDI? Sure. I think I've heard him before. Same okay.
Also a possibility. Multiple processes have been investigated since the 1970s, but the winner right now is a process called SILAX, which uses tuned lasers that can preferentially excite the molecules containing one isotope over another. Now this looks like it's to be much more efficient than centrifuge systems, but there are people that argue that any improvement in efficiency is undesirable because it would make it easier for a state to enrich uranium in secret. And I feel that this is an important moment to bring up the fact that most measures to limit the development of nuclear warheads by nations revolve around limiting enrichment capabilities. Technologies which can be applied to enrich uranium are strictly monitored, which can present problems for technologies which have benign applications. The old gas diffusion...
Gas centrifuges are just simple physics. There's no chemical reaction. There's no breaking up of atoms. Yeah, it seems like it, but centrifuges feel like chemical things to me, but I guess they're not, right?
Plants would be huge, and building these without letting the rest of the world know is really hard. As such, technologies which improve the efficiency and shrink the scale of these processes down present a problem for those working to limit nuclear proliferation. And that is why SILAX, a process developed by a private Australian company, has been declared a secret by the US government. Wow. There's been cooperation here, but it is almost unique that a foreign industrial process has been converted to a top secret by the US government. Now, to allow nations access to enriched uranium for peaceful power reactors, the IAEA has worked with existing nuclear powers to establish projects like the International Uranium Enrichment Center in Arkhangelsk, Siberia, where enrichment is handled by an existing nuclear producer, with the non-producers theoretically owning an equity stake in the plant, thereby giving them access to enriched uranium without actually giving them the technology to enrich it. Anyway, I hope this has all been enriching. Next time we'll look in detail at how plutonium is manufactured. I'm Scott Manley, fly safe.
You didn't answer my question!
Naturally occurring uranium...
There's no way this is going to answer my question in 1 minute.
It's mostly uranium-238 and needs to be enriched to increase the amount of uranium-235. The level
The panning, yes.
of uranium-235 isotope in uranium ore is 0.72%. It is 3.5% in nuclear plant fuel rods and 90% in nuclear bombs. The ore is first made into yellow cake. Fluorine is then added to create gaseous uranium hexafluoride. Uranium hexafluoride can be enriched by diffusion. The gas is pumped through a high-pressure feed stream into a low-pressure chamber fitted with a porous membrane. As uranium-235 is smaller than uranium-238, it passes through the membrane faster, making uranium-235 enrichment possible. Most enrichment plants today use centrifuges. As a centrifuge spins, the heavier uranium-238 is forced towards the walls, while the uranium-235 stays in the center. The gas can either be enriched to 3.5%, which is suitable for fuel rods, or enriched further to 90% to make nuclear bomb fuel. The Israeli PM on Sunday urged the US to ban Iran from enriching uranium beyond
12 years ago. Nice.
3.5%.
Uranium-238
Oh, this guy!
is at 97%. This is reactor fuel. The process by which you get from the natural abundance to the reactor fuel is called enrichment. And I should mention, because it's in the news, if you wanted to make a nuclear bomb, you actually have to get up to 90% uranium-235, which of course leaves the rest of it, 10%, as uranium-238. The same enrichment scheme you use to take naturally occurring ore to reactor fuel, you could keep running for many, many more months or maybe years and reach nuclear bomb-grade material. The thing about this is that uranium, as we've talked about, is a plentiful natural substance. So the key to making a bomb is being able to get it to this level of enrichment. Once you have it, the knowledge of how to make a nuclear bomb is actually quite widespread. The gatekeeper to people, or really countries, having nuclear weapons is the ability to enrich it. So let's go back in time to where it was first discovered that you could make a nuclear chain reaction, and then, of course, that perhaps this could be something actually used in wartime, World War II. It was the genesis for creating the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Enrichment is difficult because uranium-238 and 235 are the same chemical. Remember, every one of these uraniums has 92 protons. That's what makes it uranium, and 92 electrons. The difference is that the 238 has 146 neutrons versus 143 neutrons for the uranium-235. The only difference is this less than 1% mass difference. And we somehow have to utilize that mass difference to be able to enrich it. Enrichment is a huge effort. In fact, in the 1940s, the U.S. created in part Oak Ridge National Lab for this very purpose. Now, this is a modern picture, but still, the National Lab was nestled in the middle of the Tennessee mountains, about an hour away from Knoxville, being a place where they could enrich uranium. There's another aerial picture of the lab showing you it's kind of deserted around there. It's also in some beautiful hilly area and a convenient power feed away from massive amounts of electricity. The Tennessee Valley Authority hydroelectric dams created to power the gaseous diffusion separation plant at Oak Ridge. You see, the idea to use this giant plant was somehow to utilize the mass difference between the two isotopes of uranium. First, to do that, you have to turn it into a gas. So the uranium fuel was made into...
Into what? Hexafluoride, uranium hexafluoride. We've heard that a million times, right?
The gaseous uranium hexafluoride.
Wow.
And this dilutes the mass difference even further because you've got the fluorine molecules, right? So now our mass difference is...
Oh, that's chemistry, right? That's a different molecule.
Exceptionally tiny. But U-238F6 is slightly heavier than uranium-235F6.
Ah, yo mama.
Very slightly. If I use diffusion, diffusion happens proportional to 1 over the square root of the mass. So a lighter substance will diffuse slightly faster than a heavy substance. This was the thought of the gaseous separation plant at Oak Ridge. Basically take a filter and put something through it, and the heavier stuff won't go through quite as fast. So you need to build a lot of machines because the separation factor using gaseous diffusion between the two different masses is only 1.0043, 4,000th of 1% increase in separation. And after all, we're trying to get from 0.7%, if we're making a bomb, all the way to 90%. And every stage only improves you by this much. Here's a picture of the gaseous diffusion system at Oak Ridge. These are large, large containers, and there aren't just 4 of them, there are thousands.
Wow.
Let's look at a diagram to see how this works. So the high pressure gas, the UF6, comes in. And these are all your little coffee filters, your diffusion membranes. And of course, what's going on?
What are these, fluorine? I don't know, probably Is the lowest boiling point gas thing maybe something? Maybe? I don't know. And binds easily with it? That's my guess.
To diffuse faster, something that's slightly less massive, the U-235. So here would be the enriched stream, and here would be the depleted stream.
Wow!
Not by some huge factor. Remember this 1.0443? That means if it starts at 0.7, right, the depletion and the enrichment fraction goes to something like, well, multiply that times 0.7. We've got something like 0.7003 and 0.6997 through one stage. Then you would take this enriched stuff, put it through another system like this, and it would go up a little bit further and a little down further. You have to take the stuff that was de-enriched and put it back into the first one. And eventually, through massive numbers of these machines. And
fluorine is also pretty reactive and loves to bind with stuff. It's pretty common and easy to make also. Everything on that in that column is binds with stuff, right? That's like the slut greedy missing one electron thing, that column.
in years of doing this, you could get up to the desired enrichment.
Wow! Cool, thanks!
This was 1940s technology. What about today? Today,
What about it?
we go to something much better, called the gaseous centrifuge.
Whoa.
Here are pictures of centrifuges. And as you might imagine, and how this demo shows, if you spin something, the heavier part goes out to the side. If the heavier part goes out to the side, the lighter part stays in the middle. These centrifuges spin like tops. Here's another picture. And you need many of them, of course, but their volume is nowhere near as massive as the volume of the types of gaseous diffusion. A diagram that shows how they work is again a very similar principle, that you feed the gas in, and that as this spins in a circle, the heavier substance comes to the outside of the cylinder. That would be the U-238, the depleted uranium.
This isn't going to give me my answer either, but we'll watch the rest. This guy's channel is good for literally everything. This guy's a god-tier explainer on all things.
And from the center of the column, you get the lighter gas. That is the enriched U-235. The separation factor for a gaseous centrifuge.
What is your question? My question is it easier to go from 20% enrichment to 60% or 60% to 90%? Does it get easier as the material is more enriched? I don't have the chemistry background or physics background to say. If I got a thing that's like highly enriched and I'm trying to get it a few more points enriched, is it easier to do that at that point? Or is it more difficult? I have no idea.
Or a gaseous centrifuge can be as high as 1.5. That's great. You go from 0.7 to all the way up to something that's like 1, right? And down to something like 0.4 or so, all in one step. Many fewer steps are
needed. They showed you the energy chart on the Scott Manley video. Wait, did they? Where? Fuck. Not you. Not you. Definitely not you. God damn it. I'm too lazy to type right now. Going Nuclear episode 7. It was one of those. This guy. That is your question. Open an Excel spreadsheet, apply the separation factor, and figure out how many generations it takes from 20 to 60, then 60 to 90. Well, fuck you. Well, if you know how to type all that shit, why don't you do it, motherfucker?
And now, the History Channel presents
Holy shit, this is so painfully unfunny. Wait. This is a 3-dayer now. We're finishing this. Wait, stop.
Needed to be able to get up to the enrichment level that you would like. That also brings us to a very timely subject, and that's the subject of Iran. Iran has centrifuges to enrich fuel. According to Iran, they want to hit.
Now, one important thing to understand is enrichment is a very nonlinear process. Once it gets going a little, it accelerates and accelerates and accelerates. So when you have gone from the 0.7% U-235 that you dig up out of the ground up to 4.5% for a civilian power reactor.
Oh, wait, hold on. Can you intuit the answer to this? Like if I had a whole gaseous thing and very, very, very little of it was the smaller thing, because U-235 is a lower atomic weight than the much bigger thing. For a centrifuge, I have to spin out all of the big stuff. But once I start to get to these like higher percentages, like if it was 50-50, well, I've got way more pure stuff. And then once I get to more with only 1% big stuff, there's just a little bit that I have to spin off. But okay, so I don't know if I'm allowed to intuit that. I mean, I can intuit that explanation, but I don't know if it's correct. But
sure. You have already done 3/4 of the work of going all the way to 90%.
Okay, so it's very, very, very hard to go from 0 to 4. But okay, interesting, gotcha. Once enriched from 0.7% to 4.5%, 3/4 of the work of going to 90% is already done. Damn, okay.
That's why the international community is so concerned about Iran building up.
So having that 60%, that's like a 400 kilogram stockpile of 60% stuff is really bad, because it can be, the process to go from 60 to 95 would be way quicker.
These stockpiles, some of which are at 4.5% or so, some of which...
Oh, and then somebody linked this from the paper. Yeah, so every single person who's been typing this in chat is incorrect. And I like how you assume that the answer was like insanely obvious. How can Destiny build massive complexes in Factorio but not figure out that it's harder to go from 5 to 20 or 20 to 60? Like, you guys are just like typing this like, oh, well, obviously as you get closer and closer. In some ways, intuitively, that can be true. Like if you're thinking like RuneScape leveling or certain types of like log or whatever stuff, but that's not necessarily true for this application. You wouldn't just assume that all the time. Okay. How much effort is required to get to weapons grade uranium? Very little effort is needed to get to the extra, from the extra 20%. So 83.5% of the effort, according to the paper that this was linked from, is needed to reach 4%. And then you need 8.5 points more of effort to reach 20. And then 8 points more of effort to go from 20 to 90.
Which are at 20% or so. They're far from 90% in the actual percentage, but in terms of the amount of the enrichment work that's already done, it's a huge fraction. Once you get to the 20% enrichment level, you've already done about 90% of the work of going to 90% enrichment. So that means if you have a stock of that kind of stuff, then it's much easier to have a small number of centrifuges somewhere secret.
So 60 to 90 are pretty much the same in terms of effort? Well, no. Over like 3/4 of the effort is just getting to like 5%. You're basically, once you're at 5%, you're most of the way there to 95%, I think, apparently. It's like 15% effort more, or 17 points of effort more to go from 4% to 90%. So how do other countries know if Iran is making 90% enriched uranium and not just 4.5% for fission reactors? Because they've already, I think, observed 60% stockpiles, like 400 kilograms of 60% stockpiles.
Have a domestic nuclear power program, and they need to make their 3% level reactor fuel. Great. The worry of the West is that they will continue running the centrifuges, and they will get up to the 90% level needed to make a nuclear bomb. They say, no, of course we're not going to do that. The West says, okay, well, let us inspect. And even if there's an agreement, there's a worry that, is there some diffusion plant one doesn't know about? Is there some centrifuges you don't know about? Are they really being truthful? Have they really already perhaps made the 90% enrichment material? I'm not a political scientist. I'm not teaching a course on politics. I don't know what the answers are, but I want you to understand the technical things that are involved. Making a gas centrifuge that can get this type of separation factor is not trivial at all. It's an extremely high precision device that needs to run extremely tight tolerances. But if you can enrich your fuel from the 0.7% to the 3% reactor, with enough time and money and the very same machine, you can take it from the 3% to the 90%. That's what you need to know about enrichment.
Wow. Well, good luck. Okay. Well, I guess I'm leaving. Hopefully, we're all still here tomorrow. We don't know if our Israeli audience will be. We're going to cappuccino, 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 my tuners. Catch you guys next. Stream right now, hopefully.